Did you go to heaven?
Kelvin is the one who created all this.
What are you fighting over? Us?
If there is 10 million in my account, it will be in the front page the next day.
Do you have 10 million?
Oh, Jesus, hold my hand. Hallelujah.
It's happening right here on Question Time today.
Monday to Thursday at 5:30 p.m. on the SABC News Channel.
We are Newsroom. We're in the West. Kendall Machamate and myself, Evan Jansen. We're coming to you live from Johannesburg here in South Africa. Of course, between 9 and 12 every weekday morning. We're also live on YouTube. We've got a streaming facility there. You can watch us live anywhere in the world. You can also watch us back on demand in the office later in the day if the boss don't allow you to watch TV first thing in the morning. Anyhow, today we're bringing the hashtag Dagga debate back into the consciousness. Of course, some pronouncements were made by the Central Drug Authority here in South Africa in the last week or so, which has changed the game a little bit. Today we ask you the question, should all marijuana use be decriminalized in South Africa? That's our question for today. What do you think about that question? Send us your views. Send us some questions. We'll have the Central Drug Authority with us in studio shortly. They will talk about, well, what the position is right now and clear it all up, and maybe we can take that discussion a little bit forward into the entire show today. So at SABC Newsroom, that's where you can give us your contribution today. But lots of news as always. Let's go to Renee for the headlines.
President Jacob Zuma meets the security cluster to discuss terror alerts issued by foreign embassies. Former President Mandela's grandson Ndaba delivers a touching speech on the legacy of his late grandfather at the UN General Assembly. And 2 Palestinians are accused of killing 4 others in a suspected terror attack. Let's take a look at what's happening in your sports news with Kendall Machamate.
Thank you very much, Renee. No, good morning to you and good morning, Evan.
Morning,
a very interesting topic we've got as a question of the day. I'm sure we're going to get a lot of responses from Africans continent-wide. Good morning to you. This is what we've got for you in terms of the sports today. Less than 2 months away from the Olympic Games, and Chad Leclos is in red-hot form, taking gold at the Mare Nostrum in Cannes, France.
That is a new Mare Nostrum record for Chad.
I had failed a drug test at the Australian Open.
Disgraced tennis superstar Maria Sharapova gets her official sanction for failing a drugs test, a 2-year ban. South African Rugby and the ANC Youth League have confirmed that plans to disrupt Springbok test matches will no longer be put into action. That is what we've got for you coming up in the sports a little later. But for now, it's back to the main desk for the news.
Thank you very much, Kendall. President Jacob Zuma has met the security cluster in Pretoria to discuss the terror alert issued by the US government last week. Britain and Australia then issued similar alerts. The US Embassy says the status of the alert, which warns of possible Islamic State-inspired attacks in South Africa over Ramadan, remains unchanged. Yesterday's meeting followed a protest by government to the American, British and Australian embassies, accusing them of acting on dubious and sketchy information. The presidency says South Africa will cooperate with Washington on all security issues and that relations between the 2 countries remain sound. Executive Mayor of the Nelson Mandela Bay Metropolitan Municipality, Danny Jordan, says he faced a number of challenges when he took over as mayor just a little over a year ago. Jordan says there were service delivery and corruption issues when he joined the municipality. He spoke to SABC News ahead of his State of Nelson Mandela Bay City earlier this morning.
Well, I think part of the intervention has been precisely around the lack of service delivery, problems of corruption, The city was drifting towards serious deficits, and generally it was a mood of despondent and hopelessness. I think 1 year later, as we go to the report, we will present a completely different picture. As you've indicated, the insert showed the internet connectivity, Wi-Fi, we launched it at the school there, and the kids were so excited because no longer do they have to get in a bus to go to the library, spend transport costs. They can sit in their classroom, connect, and look at any of the information that they require. Also, this metro has 40,000 students, and we have to take care of these students, and I'm sure they will be excited that they too will have 1 gig free a month from the metro.
And now a day ago, the council approved a budget of 10.9 billion rand for this municipality to assist you to turn it around. What were the considerations for you as you were putting together that budget?
Well, we have to consider 3 components. One, that of service delivery, that of addressing the needs of the poor, which is a fundamental issue for us. The second is to continue to stimulate economic growth. And the third is to look at sports, arts, culture, as well as taking care of the elder or the older persons in our metro. I think we have a good balanced budget, and also we have a surplus. We have 1.3 billion rand investment in infrastructure rollout. Of course, we have grants from the national government of over 700 million for housing. We're accelerating housing. This year we're going to build about 7,400 houses, continue with rectification, dealing with electricity, dealing with the informal settlement and electrifying those settlements. We have 25 million rand for that. And then also looking at old age homes. These old age homes were neglected in our metro. We are investing money there to make sure that the old age homes and the people there are also comfortable environment, as well as looking at sport. Sport is very important in this metro, as you may know. Arts and culture is very important, and we've invested significant amounts of money in those areas as well.
President of the Association of Mine Workers and Construction Union, AMCU, Joseph Matunjwa, has condemned the killing of mine workers across all mining operations in the country. Matunjwa was addressing Impala mine workers on the upcoming wage negotiations in the mining sector at Rustenburg in the northwest. The condemnation comes only days after the killing of 2 mine workers at Zondereinde Platinum Mine near Notem in Limpopo. He also expressed AMC's concerns about the safety of mine workers in the country's mines. Our reporter had this to say.
Addressing the AMCU members at Impala's number 8 shaft, Matunjwa lamented the living conditions of the mine workers. He also called for compensation for the deceased mine workers' families. While AMCU is demanding better wages for its members, it is now more concerned about the safety of the mine workers.
The mining sector can do more in terms of safety of the mine workers. From January to date, we are about 35. It's about 35 mine workers that has been killed in these mines. So we are very worried. And again, we tried to apply for a marsh at Nedlek under Section 77, and we've been denied. So it shows clearly that profit is put before the workers.
Matunjwa appealed to mine workers to stop killing one another.
We condemn such activities of killing one another at the workplace. The employer mustn't sow the seed of division amongst the workers.
AMCU has now vowed not to rest until their concerns have been met, and also challenged the mining companies to prioritize the interests of its employees. Muitsi Masibi, SABC News, Rustenburg.
2 Palestinians have killed at least 4 people at a popular shopping and restaurant area in Tel Aviv, across the street from Israel's Defense Ministry building. 6 people are believed to be wounded. Both gunmen, identified by police as Palestinians from a village near the city of Hebron in the Israeli-occupied West Bank, were apprehended and one was wounded. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited the scene and described the attack as savage crime of murder and terrorism. Violence since October has killed at least 207 Palestinians and 28 Israelis. Well, that's your top news for now. We will be back at the top of the hour with more news. But for now, it's over to Eben.
Yeah, thank you very much, Renee. Of course, today we're bringing back the marijuana debate. If you're in South Africa, it's been called #Dagga debate now. Some call a sensational move. The Central Drug Authority in South Africa has taken a definitive position on the use of Dagga and has called for it to be decriminalized. Now, the CDA's head researcher, Professor Dan Steyn, says their opinion is based on evidence studied over time in different countries. Steyn says that the CDA's stance falls between commercialization outright and staunch criminalization. Now, to explain this to us, we are joined this morning by Mr. Peter Yuko from the Central Drug Authority here in South Africa. Mr. Yuko, very nice to have you with us again.
Morning, Evan.
This is a definitive development. The media outlets around the country are calling this the biggest thing to happen in the pro-legalization community for decades. How do you view it at the Central Drug Authority right now? Can you maybe clear it up, the position for us?
Well, we're pleased that at last the Central Drug Authority is able to make its statements and make its position known and making an impact on society. Please understand, we're not pro-legalization. We state in our position statement, which is really based on evidence, as Dan Steyn said, it's research. We want to have the facts before we can make any recommendation. It's not a government position. It's a recommendation of the Executive Committee of the Central Drug Authority for the Minister and for Parliament to consider. There are three positions that you can take. One is status quo, leave it as it is, and we continue with the war on drugs, which has largely failed. The second is decriminalization, so that you can possess marijuana and not go to jail. And the last one is full legalization. We've taken the sensible route, the middle route of decriminalization to consider that we won't have users put in prison. Bear in mind that legalization has not been shown that it will be good for public health, and we need to be very careful about that.
Yeah, well, I want you, before we talk about that process and what has brought us here, tell us about the research that you guys have done. You've been criticized in the past for moving too slowly with pronouncements and these kinds of things, but you've been very thorough in the work that you've done until now.
Yes, the work has been done by the research committee, which is headed up by Professor Dan Steyn and Dr. Eva Manyeni, who's in the Northwest University. They and their committee have looked at a lot of research. I'm not personally fully familiar with it, but the conclusions and the discussions that we've had have led us to this really clarification statement, which is really clear. Decriminalization is one thing. Legalization doesn't show to have good health effects. We know that cannabis is a psychoactive drug. And like tobacco, alcohol, cannabis with other psychoactive drugs do need to be controlled and well managed. That's important. We can't place public health at risk.
What is your research? What does it say about the medicinal use of it? For instance, we see in the social media age today many pronouncements are being made about what marijuana or what the active ingredients in marijuana can do. It can cure anything from spasticity to cancer and the like. What does the research say?
Well, a lot of the things that you hear are anecdotal. The research, the evidence is much more important, and there is evidence to indicate that some of the extracts of the marijuana plant are good for treating nausea, for example, after chemotherapy. Spasticity can be treated, but we still need to bear in mind that it is a psychoactive substance. It is available. Things like dronabinol and nabilone have been, which are extracts from the plant, have been shown in some circumstances to be effective.
Talk us quickly about this change of position. You've mentioned the decriminalization, which is the middle of the road position that you've taken, and explain that maybe a little bit more in detail, and also tell us about these recommendations that you're now going to put forward to government.
Well, the decriminalization simply means that there will be less burden on the criminal justice system and fewer people in jail simply because they smoked or possessed marijuana. That means the dealers and the growers and others will still be dealing an illegal substance. We have to remember that right now marijuana is illegal.
Yeah.
It's not a new position of the Central Drug Authority. It's a position which has been developed over many months and years of consideration. One problem that we do have is that there is not enough funding for full research. We need money to do funding of our own. Some things that happen in other countries are not necessarily applicable to South Africa.
Yeah.
There is a model in the Netherlands which is very well known. Portugal has followed another model. We need to look at those and consider the evidence that they produce, but we also need to conduct full research in South Africa. We are an extremely multicultural society which needs special attention and special legislation and controls.
You talk about the money that is needed for research and so forth. There are a lot of pro-legalization, outright legalization protagonists who say that should be the way that we should be going, and we should be using the money to maximize the benefits of this plant.
Yes, of course, you should try to maximize everything in nature, but this doesn't come without risks. There are psychoactive ingredients in the drug, and it's dangerous, and smoking marijuana is linked to cardiovascular disease, to respiratory disorders. It's linked to cognitive impairment. There's evidence to indicate that teenagers who experiment with marijuana early on, and their brain is not fully developed yet, they have developmental problems and are subject to greater degree of psychotic disorders in later life. We have to prevent all those things. And so legalization doesn't appear to be a route that can go at this time. We recognize that there's some people who call for it. Maybe they simply suffer from a substance use disorder. And that is a condition which is a chronic, relapsing, recurring, chronic, really, brain disorder, a brain disease. It cannot be cured, but it can be treated. We'd like to treat those users, but we don't want to encourage open use and smoking of marijuana, which is dangerous.
Now, our Minister of Health here in South Africa, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, he's a staunch member of the anti-smoking lobby in general. He's the guy that says there's no place for smoking in the 21st century. Now, when we talk about marijuana use, are we going to distinguish between the two going forward? Say, for instance, the use of eating the plant and using oil compared to smoking and so forth when you put this forward through Parliament?
Well, as I said, there is evidence to indicate that extracts of the oil like dronabinol and nabilone are good for certain conditions like nausea. And I must place on record that it is available in South Africa. There are mechanisms that you can apply to the Medicines Control Council and get those substances for treatment of disorders. It is a difficult process, unfortunately, and we need to streamline it. But it is available in South Africa.
In conclusion, at the Central Drug Authority, what is the next step that you're going to take, and what should the public be on the lookout for? Will they be asked to air their views, share their views with you?
Certainly. The Central Drug Authority is a consultative forum. We've spoken to various people, and we will continue to do so. We would like to have more money for research and do our own research. But remember that there are cases before the court. There's also a bill before Parliament. So let's wait and see what happens with the court case. I think inevitably it will end up before the Constitutional Court, and let's follow what happens, the process of the bill through Parliament.
Well, Mr. Yuka, thank you for joining us today. Peter Yuka from the Central Drug Authority. Some say it's a massive change in policy in South Africa. Mr. Yuka says this is just the next generation of a discussion and a research process that has been going on for many, many years. Thank you for joining us. Now, time for us to take a quick look at what is happening on social media. Of course, we'll continue this discussion after a short break. But first up, let's start with a couple of the hashtags that are doing the rounds right now. I've got to get up and move, as it were. The first hashtag you should be on the lookout for is called hashtag Israel. Nearly fell off my chair there. Now, 4 people have been killed in a shooting at a popular food market in Tel Aviv, close to the country's defense ministry. Now, it's believed to be an act of terror. That's the first That's the first scenario. And here is a security video, some footage that captured some of the moments of the attack. You can see the absolute mayhem. Absolute mayhem. And this building, of course, right across the Defense Ministry building, the Israeli Defense Ministry building in Tel Aviv. Now, Palestinians have been blamed for the attack. It's alleged that they are Palestinian men from outside of the town of Hebron, but that remains to be tested. Also, tributes are continuing to pour in for the late, great, much adored Nigerian former player and coach Stephen Keshi. Of course, the hashtag is Keshi if you want to go and put a word of condolence in after the passing of the great man. Another hashtag doing the rounds, Hillary Clinton. Clinton is also receiving a lot of global support now, especially from women around the world after being declared the first female candidate for the Democratic Party. Here's a tweet that says, "One small step for women, one giant leap for mankind." Wonderful. Of course, the celebrities are queuing up to lend their support. Ellen DeGeneres is one, Lady Gaga is another. There you have it. And in some sports news, hashtag Maria Sharapova, the tennis star who was banned from professional game for 2 years this week after she was found using a banned substance. She's set to appeal this. Her sponsor Nike has decided to back her and continue their deal with Sharapova. This, of course, after the ITF pointed out that, well, she didn't take the drug knowingly. She was going to get a 4-year sentence. They said only halved it, gave a 2-year sentence. She's not happy. That one's going to continue. Now for our comment of the day, this one comes from Martin Schultz. It's a verified account at Martin Schultz. He says, strongly condemn the attack in Tel Aviv. No cause could ever justify outright murder. He says condolences to the families, thoughts to the wounded, and support to the authorities. That one came in just now. Of course, today we ask you, should all marijuana use be decriminalized? Should marijuana be legalized? Should be the simple question. Now, let's take a look at what you are saying on social media. Of course, you can tell us at SABC Newsroom what it is. Here we have Newsroom. Yes, the officials must legalize it because we all know how helpful it can be to people with cancer. That one from the KSDK showcase. Unati Grootboom, one of our constant supporters. Newsroom, I don't think they must decriminalize it because we will have a society full of high people. But Unati, surely that's we've got a society of people that drink. I don't really see the difference. Rebel Rider says, Newsroom, Dacha debate. It's time to join Israel and the USA in correcting the injustice done by the criminalization of a very useful plant. That's a sober view there from the Rebel Rider. Madiba 2.0 says, at Newsroom, one word, obviously. Wow. The Rebel Rider is back. Dacha should be re-legalized. It's safer than alcohol and many legal substances that are more harmful to us. It's been pointed out that it is a psychoactive drug a little bit earlier by the Central Drug Authority. And of course, we know that our Minister of Health is very tough on the current smoking laws here in South Africa. But let's move on and take a look at what's happening on the newspapers from around the globe. Now, we'll start in Israel. The Jerusalem Post reports that following the deadly terrorist shooting in Tel Aviv last night that left 4 people dead and several others wounded, the coordinator of government activities in the territories, Major General Yoav Mordechai, cancelled the easing of some security restrictions that were in place for the Muslim month of Ramadan. Then, in the United States, the USA Today says Maria Sharapova, who tested positive for the banned substance meldonium at the Australian Open in January, she's been given a 2-year suspension. That's according to the ITF, the International Tennis Federation. Finally, in Europe, The Guardian reports that Hillary Clinton has cemented her status as the Democratic nominee for president with convincing primary wins in California, New Jersey and New Mexico, calling on supporters of a rival, Bernie Sanders, to unite behind her historic candidacy. It's going to be a very interesting one. Hillary Clinton up against Donald Trump. They used to be very good friends. 20 years ago. Anyhow, take a look now at what's happening in the courts. We start here in Johannesburg, where former crime intelligence boss Richard Mdluli and former policeman Ntembeni Mthunzi are expected to appear in the Palm Ridge High Court. The pair face charges of intimidation, kidnapping, assault with intent to do grievous bodily harm, and then also defeating the ends of justice. Also here in Johannesburg, judgment in the restraints application of convicted Czech fugitive Radovan Krejcir, as well as 4 others, that's expected to resume. The group is on trial for the murder of Lebanese national Sami Issa. Now, we'll keep you updated how those cases develop right here on this very channel, on this very show. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll continue with the Dagga debate here. We've got pro-Dagga activist Myrtle Clark and her husband, the Dagga couple. They'll be here to talk about legalization of marijuana. They'll follow up after the conversation we had with Peter Yuko from the CDA. See you now.
One other person has been shot dead and another is in a critical condition in hospital.
The CRL has laid charges against controversial televangelist Paseka Motsoeneng.
More than 1.3 million South Africans have been added in the past 2 registration weekends.
The International Monetary Fund warns that policy uncertainty could dampen economic growth in South Africa.
And all eyes are on the new Bok coach, Alistair Coetzee. He's challenged to keep everyone in the country happy.
Welcome back. We're bringing the hashtag Dagga debate back to life here on Newsroom. Now, you know we have a checkered history with all sorts of activities that have been going on this show with regards to the discussion around marijuana use. Meanwhile, of course, pro-Dagga activist Myrtle Clark has welcomed the announcement and called it a rational statement and a bold step. Now, to discuss this further, we're joined by the Dagga couple this morning. That's Myrtle Clark and Julian Stobbs. No, they're not married. They live in sin.
That's correct.
Morning, guys.
Hello.
Hello.
Myrtle, let's start with you, seeing that you've been put in the forefront a little bit in this story. This is a little bit of a shift from the CDA. What's your reaction to this?
Thank you very much, CDA. Thank you for getting out of the same tired old arguments that get repeated over and over again and giving a new perspective to this whole debate. Moving in the right direction, we would say.
Julian, you heard what Peter Yuko said a little bit earlier. He talks about the middle of the road.
Yes, indeed.
This is where their position is now, in the middle of the road. It's not criminalization, it's not legalization, it's decriminalization.
It's a start even. It's a start of another paradigm, perhaps. It might be the chink in the armour of the last apartheid law. But we've got to be very careful with decriminalisation because it hasn't really worked anywhere on the planet yet. Holland, Peter mentioned Holland. They've had it's a 40-year-old decriminalisation programme now. But they've got awful problems because there's so many grey areas with it.
Yeah.
You're allowed to have it in your pocket, but you're not allowed to buy it. Where did he get it? Who supplies it? Where's it all from? So there's more grey areas with decriminalisation than there is with outright illegality some of the time.
What does decriminalisation mean? Does it mean you can grow it at home?
No. No.
No, it doesn't.
No,
it doesn't mean you can use it as medicine. There's nothing changes. The black market is still the black market.
Yeah.
People who use it as medicine are still considered as criminals. But what does happen is a low-level user like Myrtle and I, we might not have a monkey on our shoulders and looking over our backs all the time when we want to smoke some cannabis. So we wouldn't go to jail as a result of having a couple of grams on our person, perhaps. But that is the only thing that changes. And as a friend of ours in New Zealand rightly pointed out, decriminalisation doesn't stop any war on drugs, it just extends it. It's a little bit more humanitarian, perhaps, harm reduction.
Myrtle, does this mean that our children, young people in South Africa are still at risk? They still have to go to what we call known drug dealers to acquire marijuana because it's decriminalised, but you can't grow it? You can't access it in another way. Is that what it means, Storm?
Yes. It definitely means that people who cultivate or trade in the cannabis plant would still be considered criminals, and those are the very people who would be supplying that cannabis. You're not even allowed to, as you said, grow your own. Yeah. So the police could rock up at your house and say, okay, you're standing in your kitchen with a bud in your pocket. Yeah. That is legal. But you cannot stand in your kitchen with a pot plant on the windowsill. That is not legal. Now, that doesn't really make sense. And I think that while it is a positive move on the part of the CDA, they haven't really considered this whole thing of decriminalisation. Maybe they should put their appeal for funding for research into decriminalisation itself and whether it's worked. Lots of other clever people around the world have done lots of research that the CDA now want to repeat. Let them do some new research in actual decriminalisation.
One point about that Myrtle made about the police. Yeah. We had a giggle when the CDA announced this because we can't believe that it would ever filter down to the SAPS. The boys in blue in Neisner and George and Randburg, the Rottweilers in blue, we call them. Yeah. There's draconian drug policies in those 3 police stations. And we don't think decriminalisation will phase those guys at all.
Well, you mentioned the police. Now, in the past, we've had contentious scenarios like crop spraying in call them very rural communities who've depended for generations on growing marijuana. Yeah. We're talking in the Kai region, it's in the Eastern Cape and so forth. Do you expect that to still continue?
Of course, yeah. The decriminalisation does not do anything to stop any spraying because the police are looking. They always hide behind the 1961 United Nations Drug Conventions, but nowhere in the conventions does it say that you must incarcerate people and you must spray poison on dacha fields. The convention says go about your business to keep the plant illegal, to stop the supply and to reduce the demand. That's what the convention says. So use all means at your disposal. So the United Nations doesn't actually condone the spraying of the former trans guy.
What would you like to see as the next steps?
Okay, the next step would be, of course, as Peter Uko said, everybody needs funding. Okay, and everybody needs research, but we don't want to be repeating the research of the use of cannabis in cancer or the use of cannabis in spasticity. Our research needs to be on the model for South Africa and how it works. And that research needs to be done at home, and it needs to be done by everybody, not just the prohibitionists.
Julian, what does the early numbers say about the model for South Africa?
Well, we've been to Europe to see many models close up. Peter mentioned Portugal. We've been to Spain. Spain has got an incredible system of cannabis community clubs, and that's what we would like to see start in South Africa. And maybe with the blessing of the CDA, we could possibly have something like a green light area, a whole street in Johannesburg dedicated to the use of the cannabis plant. No alcohol in. You can have police at one end if you like. You can barricade the place off. We don't care. But we want to start a social experiment to show South Africa that the sky will not fall in and you will not get a street of zombified people.
Is this a discussion you're prepared to have with Peter Uko and with the CDA? And do you think this is the discussion that they're prepared to have with you?
Yes, Definitely. You know, we shared the same room at the South African Drug Policy Conference in January. The relations between the policy activists and the CDA didn't get off to a good start at the beginning of the conference, but by the end of the conference we were all getting on really well, and the conversations were becoming far more rational. And we look forward to this. We have to speak to each other. We want to be invited to all of their meetings. We'll invite them to all of our meetings.
Yeah.
And we can go forward with this together. Just stop throwing the gateway theory and what about the children in our faces. Let's move on. Let's be a bit more mature about this.
She said it.
Now, I want to put this to you guys, because I've had the Minister of Health in the studio a couple of times in the last month, and one of them was the smoking bans that he's very passionate about. And when I say very passionate about, he doesn't believe smoking belongs in any shape or form in the 21st century. How are you going to have this discussion with someone like the Minister of Health, who's a passionate anti-smoker?
Well, let me put it this way. We recently went to New York for the United Nations big special session on drugs. And we were very excited because we'd been told that it was decriminalised in New York. So we thought, we'll be able to smoke. It'll be great. We can score something, we'll be able to smoke, and it'll be all good.
Yeah.
Except they've got really draconian smoking laws in the whole of New York. You can't ignite and burn anything anywhere in New York. So it kind of burst our bubble a bit. So we've just been to the 21st century New York, where there is an outright ban on smoking, and human beings make a plan. They will make a plan. I don't think to talk to the health minister about such a thing, it's a dichotomy. We are so far removed from his train of thought, it's going to take a lot of time for us both to come together to have a rational discussion.
Do you believe that?
Yes, I do believe that, but it's smoking what? You know, you can't say just smoking, full stop. Smoking cannabis does not cause cardiovascular disease. Smoking cannabis does not cause respiratory problems. Smoking cannabis mixed with tobacco does.
Yeah.
And we never promote smoking of anything. There's vaporizing, there's eating, there's all sorts of different ways.
He says that vaporizing is also not very good, and the early research says that the vaporizing is bad.
He has to try it before he says it. He can't say that because he's obviously never tried it before.
He's not going to try it.
He might have to. He might have to. He might get sick one day.
What about Peter Yuko's statement a little bit earlier? He talks about it's still a psychoactive drug.
He said it 7 times.
Yeah,
he said the word 7 times. He's scared of psychoactivity. Everyone is scared of psychoactivity.
Why?
Well, it's an unknown factor to them. It goes back to my last statement. He should try it. Psychoactivity might enhance your life. It certainly enhances our lives. Our life is in HD. We don't run away from reality. We enhance our reality with the use of the plant.
What do you say to some of those long-time users who talk about paranoia after many years of use, paranoia and increased fears and all those sorts of things?
Well, you know, it's all about using these teacher plants correctly and learning how to navigate into that space. And if you spend your life never using a psychoactive plant, okay, then you are never going to have that experience, and then you are never going to have the opportunity to learn how to use those plants correctly. I mean, one of the reasons why prohibition of alcohol was instituted in America in the first place was that nobody knew how to drink the new distilled liquor. They were drinking it by the beer glass. Whiskey, just like you were drinking beer.
Yes.
You know, so the same applies to cannabis. You need to learn how to navigate into it. Right. If you use cannabis in the wrong situation, in the wrong quantity or the wrong strength, you might get paranoid. You might get nauseous. You might get a whiteout.
So you shouldn't smoke marijuana and go and walk around in a mall, for instance. That
no, it works for us.
It can dull the pain of the mall, yes, for sure.
Yeah, no,
but it's all in the setting. It really is learning how to use this.
A lot of the negative publicity is dealing with adolescents using the plant.
Yeah.
They're finding their feet. And normally with adolescents, they're going for broke. They're trying to find their limitations. And it can go pear-shaped at times. Peer pressure is an awful thing. Have 4 beers and then somebody says, here, smoke this.
Yeah.
And you do. and then it goes pear-shaped,
Yeah.
it goes green, it goes horrible. And that's the kind of thing that gets into an ICU in a hospital.
I've been told you have to go sit or lie down when that
Yeah.
happens. But guys, we've run out of time. It's been a fantastic,
dear.
fantastic conversation we've had. That was 15 minutes. That just flew by.
Flew by.
Flew by. Thank you. everyone.
Thank you very much for coming in today. Of course, we've had some call it a shift in the thinking around the legalization, or as the Central Drug Authority call it, the decriminalization process of marijuana in South Africa. It's been a massive shift from what's been before. The Dagga couple, Julian Stobbs and Myrtle Clark, been with us. They're known as the Dagga couple. You can tweet them if you want more information about what's going on in the community. Let's take a look at some of the live tweets. Now, it's a question that everybody wants to have their say about. Damien Schmidt this morning says, Newsroom, the fact that the majority of people overwhelmingly support decriminalization, legalization speaks volumes. Yes, there's a massive move towards it. Kamal Mpilo Mpatla says, Newsroom, Dagga must never be legalized. He's probably never tried it. Loreo Fisher says, Newsroom, the benefits of legalization far outweighs the negatives. Some people even talk about commercialization. S.A. Jimrat says, Newsroom, war on drugs equals the current drug problem. Rather harm reduction through legalization. Science informs Dagga medicine, says the Jimrat. Well, we've got a lot of views coming in. We'll share those views with you throughout the 3 hours of this morning. Let's move on and take a look what is on Newsroom Facebook page right now. The economic potential of Gauteng won't be fulfilled until the youth is able to acquire skills and find employment. Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa said this yesterday. Then, in Zimbabwe, 6 children from the same family died during a baptism ceremony near Sadza, a town about 150 kilometers southeast of the capital, Harare. Finally, in New York, a United Nations high-level meeting on HIV and AIDS has opened in New York with a call on the world to fast-track investment over the next 5 years to ensure that ending the epidemic is achieved as part of the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. Wonderful news. Now, you can find all of that on our Facebook page. Go there and like it. Go there and like it, and then we'll send you all the latest stories throughout every single day. Time for us now to take a break. We're talking about the Dagga debate at SABC Newsroom is where you can send us your view. Don't go away.
Other person has been shot dead and another is in a critical condition in hospital.
The CRL has laid charges against controversial televangelist Paseka Motsoeneng.
More than 1.3 million South Africans have been added in the past 2 registration weekends.
The International Monetary Fund warns that policy uncertainty could dampen economic growth in South Africa.
And all eyes are on the new Bok coach, Alistair Coetzee. He's challenged to keep everyone in the country happy.
Welcome back to Newsroom here on SABC News. Now, at 10 o'clock this morning, Cabinet will hold a meeting and address the media on various matters. President Jacob Zuma met the security cluster in Pretoria to discuss the recent terror alert that was issued by the U.S. government. That was, of course, over the weekend. Britain and Australia then followed suit and, issued a similar alert. Well, we are joined now by our reporter, Aldrin Sampier. Very good morning to you, Aldrin. Thanks for joining us. Just give us a quick overview. What's happening?
Well, good morning. Yes, we expect the post-cabinet briefing to be taking place this morning just after 10 o'clock or around about 10 o'clock, when we'll be getting all the information with regards to the discussions that took place at the cabinet meeting that was yesterday at the Union Buildings, and some various issues, of course. And as you've just indicated, that day march that the security state agency as well as DIRCO issued yesterday will definitely top today's briefing. And yesterday, when I was speaking to the DIRCO spokesperson, Clayson Munyela, about that statement, he indicated that that statement was approved at the highest level, but would not say what the highest level is or who is at the highest level. Is that President Jacob Zuma, or is it the Minister of Cooperative Governance, or is that rather the Minister of International Affairs, Maetankwana Mashabane? When we asked them also about clarity around the meeting that will be taking place between the various three embassies as well as the DIRCO here in South Africa, he did not want to indicate whether it would be the minister who would be meeting with the different embassies, but did say that it would be high-level officials within the department that will be meeting the different the embassies. Another issue, of course, considering that it is an election, but we're all in election mode, is issues around the elections and security around the elections. There's been various concerns raised, especially coming from the IEC with regards to the violence as well as political attacks and killings happening specifically in KwaZulu-Natal. The EFF has also raised concerns with the IEC and saying that they're being intimidated by the ANC. We remember the incidents that took place in Mpumalanga as well as KwaZulu-Natal. And yesterday we got reports of another incident that took place in Limpopo. Another issue today, I guess, is the issue around the economy. We heard yesterday that the GDP contracted about 1.2%, and that, of course, will be something that the Cabinet would have reflected on, and we'll have some remarks coming from the Cabinet.
Aldrin, before I let you go, just give us a quick idea. What shape will this briefing take, and what time is it expected to commence?
Well, we expect the briefing to start around about 10 o'clock. We're not too sure as yet who will be addressing the briefing, but it's most likely to be the Minister in the Presidency, Jeff Radebe, who always addresses such post-cabinet briefings. So he will be probably sitting down, giving us an insight to the cabinet meeting that took place yesterday, as well as that security cluster meeting between the President as well as the various ministers within the security cluster.
Thank you very much, Aldrin. Aldrin Samper giving us an idea as to what is happening there today. Yes, it's caused a whole lot of consternation, this terror alert. Some people say, why wasn't there a terror alert issued for the British football fans travelling to the Euros, where they found bombs and guns and all sorts? That terror alert was only issued late yesterday. Yeah, some of the comments. Richard Van Sal says, don't you find it weird that as soon as ratings agencies marked us as unchanged, we get a US and UK terror alert? Smell a rat, says Richard. Abdul Qadir says, so the shootout at the pavilion and robbery is that the terror alert the American government warned us about? No, Abdul Qadir, that wasn't it. Vacillaration says, remember when the Belgians ignored repeated warnings of an attack? Yep, it's all fun and games until an actual bomb does go off. Yes, Vessel, but do we have to deal with that anyhow? Ngite Ngiboleke says, we shouldn't send Trevor. Now we're on the radar and they're going to annoy us. He talks about the US terror alert. Anyhow, keep your views coming. We really love your views here on SABC Newsroom. That's what the show is all about. It's about you interacting with us and sharing your views on what is current and what is in the news. Now, of course, what is in the news the last day has been South African rugby and the ANC Youth League. Well, they confirmed that plans to disrupt the Springbok test matches, of course the first ones at Newlands over the weekend, these plans have been cancelled following positive engagements between the two organisations. Now, Kendall is here to help me understand what these positive engagements are. Certainly a positive for us. Yeah. We love the positive atmosphere around our national teams.
Absolutely.
What is this positive engagement? Is it the fact that Alistair Coetzee has picked 12 players of colour?
It's got a lot to do with it. In fact, I think the positive engagements are what the ANC Youth League are seeing in terms of the change of mind, the change of mood at SARU, where they're seeing that the way that Alistair Coetzee was appointed, the way he was appointed was positive, was put in a good light. The mere fact that that man has been appointed was a good thing. The fact that Alistair Coetzee, first thing he does, he takes a full training session to Belhar. You can see how full it is. You see it's full of brown-looking people, which makes a big difference. It's changing the public image of the Springboks.
The last time I saw so many, let's call them coloured people from the Cape at the training session was when they watched the All Blacks. So it's certainly very heartening to see that. Is the winds of change and transformation, is it blowing in South African sport in general? We saw the Proteas beat Australia a day before yesterday.
With 8 players of colour.
8 players of colour.
We're seeing right now, we're looking at Elton Yankees as the pivot, the Springbok fly half. He's right there. Rudy Page is right there. We've got Lionel Mapoe, who's a centre. So we're looking at different roles for Africans and colours in the Springboks to what we had in previous regimes. So this is really positive. This is very good. This is very good for Springbok rugby. And the ANC Youth League and the engagements they've been having with SARU are about what SARU has been presenting to them in terms of their game plan, what they're doing now, what they've done in the past, and where they're going. And I think this is positive for South Africa. It's positive not just for rugby, but for us as a country.
No, this is all wonderful and kumbaya, as they say. I've got goosebumps as we talk about this, which is brilliant. It's been 2 decades in the making. Let's move away from the politics now, because, we like to politicize our sport sometimes a little bit too much. Let's talk about the rugby itself. A couple of today, the box side will be announced a little bit later. What is your expectation when Alistair Coetzee names his first starting lineup? His match day 23. It's going to be a tough game against the Irish. What's your expectation of today?
I'm expecting that. First of all, we think that Elton Yankees is probably not going to be playing. He's still got that niggly injury that he's dealing with. But Rudy Page should probably be one of the starters, or if not on the bench, to come in maybe in the second half. I do think that Siya Kolisi is going to be starting. Beast is always going to be in the side, and we probably might even have Lionel Mapoe running in as a centre. So I think it's going to be a very interesting look, and it should be an interesting one at 2:45 this afternoon.
Tsetse Minnaar is a passionate South African, one of the most passionate South Africans that I know. What do you make of this new look, new feel, Springbok side, and what's your expectation on Saturday afternoon? Are you watching the game?
You know what? I'm all about performance. So new looks, new anything, I'm fine with that, but I just need the performance to be there. And I need to make sure, we need to put our stamp forward and show the people that, there's a reason why we are the best in the world. Okay? That's what we need to do.
Said like a true fan.
No, Tsetse knows about the weather, I can tell you that. I love his work. But let's just wrap up before we go to him. We've got 30 seconds. Are we ever going to get to a place where we don't look at colour in our national sides,
yes,
and we just pick the best players?
But we need to start with this, and we will. The conversations need to be had. We need to uncover all the uncomfortable parts, and then it will happen.
I love this man's optimism. It inspires me every day. But that's what we're supposed to be doing here in South Africa. We should all fly the flag. We should all put a flag outside our house, really, like they do in America, because there are too many agents in our own country that continues to break it down. We should all be building brand South Africa. That should be our job. Let's go to Tsetse. Hopefully he says there'll be rain over our beautiful country.
Hello there, welcome from the weather desk. Yes, it is time for the weather, and we are expecting rain in some parts of South Africa, but it's only coming with cold weather towards the Western Cape province. It's coming amidst a cold front that is making its way towards the southwestern Cape, and temperatures are going to plummet along the southern interior as well as over the Cape Peninsula. Also, strong winds are coming through there at around 50 kilometers an hour, so please do be extra careful there. But for those that love surfing, could be a good one, as the waves will be up and high, and temperatures are expected to be over the lower side of the 20s towards the central part of South Africa. And then by tomorrow, it's going to drop even further. Cooler conditions will be coming up towards Cape Town, PE, as well as over George. Pietermaritzburg for this afternoon is at 19 degrees. Maputo nice and hot at 27. For all those that are going to be over the capital city, Pretoria, do expect a maximum of 21. And that includes places such as the northern parts into Mamelodi as well as over Garanku. I do expect those temperatures to be into the lower 20s. Messina as well as Venda are going to be into the upper 20s. And then as you move over Lusaka, temperatures also into the lower 20s for the day. Kampala going up towards Juba as well as Addis Ababa. Do expect rainy conditions moving towards the western side. And then dry and those sunny conditions are expected for the southern part of the tropics. Temperature-wise, it's going to be, again, a warm day for everybody that's going to be in Juba. Temperatures at 34 degrees. Bangui over Central African Republic, also very hot there. Showers from Mogadishu right across towards Yaoundé. And I must tell you something interesting about the African continent is that the temperatures and the rainfall is so varied. You can go from Freetown, which is extremely rainy, to an extremely dry place towards the eastern side, where rainfall is only seen at about 15 millimeters per year. So that's just how vast it is. And then over the central parts of Africa and the Sahara Desert, do you expect hotter conditions? You can see by the red shade there that temperatures are going to be quite high up. Not much rainfall coming in towards Al Jouf. Temperatures as high as 38 for Seba as well as Al Jouf over the interior. That's where I'm going to leave it for the weather for now. Do stay tuned. There'll be more later.
Long, we celebrate those who take strides doing good and changing the world.
I really think that education has to be revisited, and it's an integral part of teaching young people skills of the future.
There's always light at the end of the tunnel.
I think that the treatment should be made available, actually, because it's costly. Growth hormones are very, very costly.
Where there is a challenge, we bring hope.
I'm alive. And the brain tumor is gone.
Join your host Buleng Mulabati every Friday at 17:30 for more uplifting stories.
Did you go to heaven?
Kelvin is the one who created all this.
What are you fighting over? Us?
If there is 10 million in my account, it will be in the front page the next day.
Do you have 10 million?
Oh, Jesus, hold my hand. Hallelujah.
It's happening right here on Question Time today.
Monday to Thursday at 5:30 p.m. on the SABC News Channel.
Hello again, this is Rena West. You've just seen Kendall Makamate. We are Newsroom, and it's shortly after 10 a.m. Central African time. If you've just joined us, a very good morning to you. Just to remind you of our first hour of discussion today, well, we asked you about the marijuana debate that's ongoing. Yes, marijuana, legalization thereof. Should all marijuana be decriminalized in South Africa, or the use thereof decriminalized? Now, Rene, there have been lots of traction on social media. Just read us one or two of the best ones.
Well, this one coming in from a Rebel Rider says, more teenagers smoke cigarettes than dacha. Cigarettes cause more harm, including killing brain cells.
Lola Fagbemi says, Newsroom, been helping me reduce the stress from work. It should be legalized. Users should only control it as you control the amount of beers you drink or the amount of chocolates that you eat. That's fully understandable.
This one coming in from Lollipop says, it is obvious that the CDA haven't actually taken legal advice to decriminalize. All you have to do is make an announcement. I wonder if it's that easy, actually.
Yeah, it's true. Jared says, Newsroom, marijuana needs to be made available for everyone on this planet. I thank the earth every day for the beautiful herb, says Jared. And we have a multitude of views coming in.
Yes, lots of views coming in here. We have this one coming in. Says, I welcome decriminalization, but it doesn't mean legalization. And legalization doesn't mean that it's good.
Look at the alcohol problems, he says. Yeah, they're there, but it's like anything you're going to use in life. If you're going to put six sugars in your coffee or your tea, you're going to have a problem. That's just the way that life works. So, wonderful. Keep the comments coming. Keep the tweets coming. For this hour, it's just after 10 now, we're going to change gears again. We're going to focus on albino killings. That will be our discussion points. Well, interviews afterwards. But you can continue the dacha debate as we'll continue to put your tweets up and continue having that discussion. Of course, we've had a shift in policy here in South Africa. The Central Drug Authority, that's the main authority on drugs in South Africa, they've said, we want this thing to be decriminalized. It's going to go to Parliament, and the whole process will follow out of that, and we'll keep you updated on the show how that goes. But there's also a lot of news still in the offing this morning. Rene is going to give us a news update.
President Jacob Zuma meets the security cluster to discuss terror alerts issued by foreign embassies. Former President Mandela's grandson Ndaba delivers a touching speech on the legacy of his late grandfather at the UN General Assembly. And 2 Palestinians are accused of killing 4 people in a suspected terror attack. Well, let's take a look at what's coming up in your sports with Kendall.
Thank you very much, Renee. Good morning to you. It seems very interesting. A lot of comments coming out here.
I think it's something that people are very passionate about. I think it's a very adult conversation that's been going on across the world, not just in South Africa. And I think many people are interested in it now.
No, definitely. Newsroom keeping its finger on the national pulse right there. Good morning to you. This is what we've got for you in the sports today. Now, less than 2 months away from the Olympic Games, and Chad Leclos is in red-hot form, taking gold at the Mare Nostrum in Cannes, France.
That is a new Mare Nostrum record for Chad.
I had failed a drug test at the Australian Open.
And disgraced tennis superstar Maria Sharapova gets her official sanction for failing a drugs test, a 2-year ban. South African Rugby and the ANC Youth League have confirmed that plans to disrupt Springbok Test matches will no longer be put into action. Right, we'll be bringing you all of that and more at 10:40 when we bring you the sports. But for now, it's back to Renee West for the news.
Thank you very much, Kendall. President Jacob Zuma has met the security cluster in Pretoria to discuss the terror alerts issued by the US government last week. Britain and Australia then issued similar alerts. The US Embassy says the status of the alert, which warns of possible Islamic State-inspired attacks in South Africa over Ramadan, remains unchanged. Yesterday's meeting followed a protest by government to the American, British and Australian embassies accusing them of acting on dubious and sketchy information. The presidency says South Africa will cooperate with Washington on all security issues and that the relations between the two countries remain sound. The IEC is going ahead with the elections despite a litany of court cases which could affect the municipal elections. The Commission held a draw which saw the Pan-Africanist movement secure the first spot on the ballot papers. The ceremony was interrupted by a former IEC staff member turned politician who said he should or would serve papers on the Commission.
Right, Leranzo has closed her eyes. She's picked. Are we ready, ladies and gentlemen? Are we ready, ladies and gentlemen?
It is this moment political parties gathered for. But just minutes before the draw, this happened.
This is crucial. We have served you with papers.
Please, Mr. Russon, can you sit down?
While tensions were quelled, the court case still looms.
We are going to court on the 14th to try and ask the High Court to set aside these processes to make sure that things are done correctly.
To stop the IEC from going ahead?
From going ahead, yes.
Okay.
Particularly closing and certifying the voters' roll, which is before the highest court in the land.
Last week, Land First, Black First challenged the IEC's decision to exclude it from the elections. This as Vuwani residents launched a constitutional court case challenging a decision that would incorporate the community into a new municipality after the elections. All this is taking place as the IEC awaits a ruling from the same court on the voters' roll.
We as the Electoral Commission, we will have to implement the orders of court, whatever those orders are. So, we are anxiously waiting, but I think we must give the court the space to do its work.
Despite this, a record number of 206 political parties will contest the upcoming elections.
The Western Cape tops the list with 77 political parties contesting the elections. It will be followed by Limpopo with 56, Gauteng with 45, and the Eastern Cape with 43.
And it's evident that the race to August the 3rd is heating up.
The fact that everybody says our emblem looks like the African National Congress, there's no ways that it looks like that. We are AIC and definitely independent.
We make sure that now our voters on the ground should be able to understand it. What is the difference between the AAC and the AIC? Therefore, we make sure that now they must be able to understand it.
We have had some of our activists and members being intimidated. We are happy that the processes that have been made available to us have been effective.
We're wary about the process of special votes. Because often party agents are not there to ensure that the process of special votes is free and fair.
Applications for special votes open on Friday. Aldrin St. Pierre, SABC News, Centurion.
The economic freedom fighters have promised to eradicate tenders and provide decent housing for residents of Zamdela Township. The Northern Free State Township has seen numerous service delivery protests. The party's deputy president visits Zamdela in Sasolburg.
A visit to the Eastern Free State. Known for attracting the youth, the party sought to ensure that their message resonates with voters of all ages. The community aired their views. Then it was time for the EFF to respond. It promised to give better housing after the elections if its candidates win.
The EFF is going to provide proper houses for all the people. There will never be a household without electricity. There will never be a household without proper running water, which is clean.
The party is the third largest in the Free State legislature, and it hopes that it will be represented at the local government in the province.
ANC members at Greenside took to the streets this morning, unhappy with the councillor candidate in their ward. They allege the Ward 8 councillor endorsed by the party was not elected by them. Traffic between Polokwane and Matlala was delayed for hours due to the protest.
Councillor nominations ahead of the August 3rd poll, a thorny issue in Limpopo.
ANC branches have been venting their anger in the past few weeks. This road was blockaded with burning tires and stones. Residents are threatening to up the ante should the ANC retain the current candidate.
The problem that we are having here at Ward 8 is about the councillor candidate, the ward councillor. Because we as community members, we have selected our own councillor candidate who is supposed to stand for us, whom we are going to vote for him.
The ANC has dismissed the claims.
It will not be possible that there is a candidate who is on the list of the ANC who is not a product of processes in the branch, that the nomination and selection processes, because our own nomination process starts at a branch and then the candidate is presented to the community. So there is absolutely no possibility of anybody just emerging without having been a product of those processes.
Calm has been restored in the area. The ANC has promised to attend to the grievances.
The Inkatha Freedom Party says it's confident that it will improve its performance during the local elections. The party's support declined during the 2014 elections when the NFP was established. The IFP will launch its manifesto over the weekend.
Zwelithini Stadium, the venue where the IFP will gather. The party is upbeat and hopes to demonstrate that it's still a force to be reckoned with.
On Sunday, we are expecting a packed house, in fact an overflowing house, and if resource constraints didn't prevent us, we could have packed Moses Mabhida Stadium or any other stadium in the country.
The party also believes its manifesto will prove that it can be trusted.
I think what the Prince is going to re-emphasize, and I think he is going to ask our candidates to pledge to South Africa on that day that they must be focused on service delivery and corruption-free municipalities.
The ANC will also launch its provincial manifesto in KwaZulu-Natal on Sunday. Linda Mkopozi, SABC News, Durban.
In a powerful address to the UN General Assembly, Ndaba Mandela has invoked the legacy of his late grandfather, former President Nelson Mandela. He appealed to the global community to ensure that all 37 million people living with HIV today can immediately access antiretroviral treatment. The younger Mandela was addressing the opening segment of the high-level meeting on the subject to rally the globe to increase investment in the next 5 years to set the course for ending the epidemic by 2030. The Assembly immediately adopted a political declaration to accelerate global action.
He'd come to continue the legacy of his grandfather and called on the Assembly to ensure that the 34 million people who have died of AIDS, including his father Makgato, who passed in 2005, did not die in vain.
My grandfather was afraid of the truth. Nelson Mandela instead spoke out loudly and with dignity. His only surviving son, Makgato Lewanika Mandela, had died of AIDS. Madiba was determined that his only son would not die in silence and in vain. This was the beginning of a national dialogue on AIDS in South Africa and a global action around the world.
He urged action to ensure that vulnerable groups, LGBTI people, sex workers, drug users and migrants among others, no longer have to live in the shadows and the stigma still associated with HIV in many countries.
I'm here to ask leaders of the 35 countries that still don't allow foreigners living with HIV to enter or reside within their countries to end travel restrictions now. Because the truth is that building walls or denying visas is not how we protect ourselves from HIV or end a global epidemic. Bigotry and fear do nothing but spread the virus.
To make history.
It has been years since my father passed away. And although I am older now, I still want him to be proud. I would have loved to see the look on his eyes today as I address the opening of this historical meeting in this historical place. Today, the eyes of millions living with HIV are on us.
It is so decided.
The Assembly shortly afterwards committed to accelerate investments to fast-track the global response over the next 5 years. Sherwin Brycepease, SABC News, New York.
2 Palestinians have killed at least 4 people at a popular shopping and restaurant area in Tel Aviv, right across the street from Israel's Defense Ministry building. It is believed that 6 people were wounded. Both gunmen, identified by police as Palestinians from a village near the city of Hebron in the Israeli-occupied West Bank, were apprehended and one was wounded. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited the scene and described the attack as a savage crime of murder and terrorism. Violence since October has killed at least 207 Palestinians and 28 Israelis. Well, that's your top news for now, but we'll be back after this break.
Why are electoral systems important in a democracy?
We think of democracy as voting people into office. The other side of the coin is that we would be more empowered and more accountable in politics if we could do the opposite, is vote them out when they don't deliver.
Politics is about who gets what, when and how.
If you look up on the internet as to how the head of state is chosen, it says monarchy.
We should not refer to an election as a contest.
So we should not shy away from the fact that an election is a contest. Of course, I do admit that it's not a bloody contest. Or it shouldn't be a bloody contest.
It shouldn't be a bloody
people,
contest.
Fight and, of course, and
it should also not be a beauty contest.
Then it shouldn't be also a beauty contest either.
Swiss people, for example, can travel internationally with a cantonal passport, not even a national one. That's like us traveling on a Free State passport, for example.
Did you go to heaven? Kelvin is the one who created all this.
What are you fighting over? Us?
If there is 10 million in my account, it will be in the front page the next day.
Do you have 10 million?
Oh, Jesus, hold my hand. Hallelujah.
It's happening right here on Question Time today.
Monday to Thursday at 5:30 p.m. on the SABC News Channel.
Hello again, you're watching Newsroom here on SABC News. Now, Amnesty International has accused Malawian police of failing to protect people living with albinism who are targeted for their body parts, which are then used in magical potions and other ritual practices. Police said they were doing all in their power to end the surge in the killing of albinos in the southern African country.
Amnesty International said in a statement that Malawian authority had failed to protect the albinos, leaving them at the mercy of criminal gangs who hunt them down for their body parts. Albinos have also been targeted in Malawi's neighbor Tanzania and elsewhere in Africa. The report said at least 18 people with albinism have been killed in Malawi since November of 2014, while at least 5 others are known to have been abducted and remain missing. 4 were murdered in April 2016, including a baby. Their bones are believed to be sold to practitioners of traditional medicine in Malawi and Mozambique for use in charms and magical potions in the belief that they bring wealth and good luck. The trade is also fueled by a belief that bones of people with albinism contain gold. Malawian government has dismissed the claims by Amnesty and say they are doing everything within their law to stop this carnage. Authorities say gangs in neighboring Tanzania and Mozambique were fueling the trade. Albinism is a congenital disorder affecting 1 in 20,000 people worldwide who lack pigment in their skin, hair and eyes. It is more common in sub-Saharan Africa.
Now, to give us a little bit more detail about the report We're joined by Duprose Muchena from Amnesty International. Very good morning to you, Duprose.
Thank you, Eben. Good morning.
I understand that you've just returned from Malawi, where you've had a meeting with the president of that country to discuss what is a national crisis, no doubt about that. What came out of that meeting with the president?
Thank you. I think what came out of the meeting was common consensus within Malawi, from victim right to the president, that the problem of attacks, killings, abductions have now reached acute proportions. And the important development there was the government accepts it's a problem. And therefore, I think the attention of the government is now focused on addressing the recommendations that are contained in our report, including its own government program of action, which it has put together as a result of the measures that have come in through in the last couple of weeks. But there's broad consensus between ourselves and the government that we're dealing with a real-life problem facing real people, 10,000, between 7,000 and 10,000 people in Malawi, people within the community of those with albinism. And I think the attention of the government is now on dealing with the problem.
You say the attention is of the government, but the report talks about the police not doing enough. Do you think there's a disconnect between what the government wants and what's happening within the police service? Or is there even a scenario of corrupt activity that could maybe hamper this process?
There are a couple of problems and barriers that Malawi faces. The first issue we raise in our report is the absence of visible policing in the community. 50% of people in Malawi live below the poverty datum line, 85% are in rural areas. And policing in rural areas where the attacks are taking place is not visible enough. The capacity of the police, forensic testing, DNA testing, documentation, surveillance, and human rights monitoring is weak. And there is an acknowledgement from both Amnesty and government that needs to improve. The second, of course, is a systematic presence of discrimination and stigma within the wider society that needs to be tackled. And then the third is the problem of access to basic services, education, health, learning capacity for kids who are no longer going to school, being withdrawn by parents because they fear that they can be abducted on the way to school, constitute the third tier of problems that the government now has to spotlight its attention on. So both government and its police agree that there are barriers that they must address. And Amnesty is directing the attention of government on what could be done.
No, Duprose, it is a very disturbing story. Tell us about the research that you've done when compiling this report. Tell us about the belief system behind the killings. It's really mired in myth, really.
There's a long tradition within African society of fairly wrong and false beliefs, myths, half-truths, and things that are conjured up to describe people with albinism. One of them is that they don't die, they just disappear. Another is that they're spirit. All the things contained in the report about they are constitutive of what you would call an economic wealth asset. Therefore, as a result, we create verbal abuse, name-calling, and these kinds of toxic things constitute the underlying currents of discrimination. And poverty, opportunism, and the existence of criminal gangs and traditional healers who then have to buy the body parts then constitute another problem. So this is why we are calling for a mass national campaign on awareness, a human rights education program by Malawi authorities and civil society, and responses and interventions to actually stop the killing and provide basic services that are needed by this community, including things such as sunscreen lotion.
Now, we've seen in other countries, and we'll be crossing to Ali Posse in Tanzania shortly, but we see in other countries like Tanzania, their government are moving to even ban witchcraft in general and the activity of witches. Is that a process that you think would help?
There are a number of steps that needs to be taken. So you can't isolate just one thing. So, for example, banning traditional healers from practicing their trade simply drives the trade underground. So you need to really think very broadly about what that constitutes. The second issue that we've pointed is the reform of the criminal justice system. People who are found with body parts, with bones, people are actually abducting, those who are intimidating. The penal code in Malawi is still relatively weak, so the punishment regimes range from 10,000 Malawi kwacha or $10 in the case of one person who tried to buy a child with albinism, to things like not spending enough time in jail, and of the cases that we looked at, there's just not been case law movement. 83 cases that the government has put forward through the police. Of those, 18 are murder cases and 2 have been concluded. So there's actually a reform of the criminal justice system that is needed urgently, including looking at whether, in fact, the prosecution capacity is there.
In your report, you touch on the genuine threat to people living with albinism. Is there a fear that, specifically in Malawi, that people could be hunted down, so much so that this group of people could become extinct?
The UN independent expert on albinism who was in the country a couple of weeks ago actually pointed out the point that if things continue the way they are, in April alone there were 4 that were killed, which constituted the bloodiest month. She feared that we may be moving towards extinction, and therefore this is an urgent case of intervention that is needed to stop the killings and restore security and freedoms to the community.
What about education? Do you think enough education, people are being educated enough about the myths surrounding the half-truths that you're talking about, and the fact that people living with albinism aren't simply, they're not spirits, they're human beings?
People with albinism are human beings like you and I. Albinism is a condition you inherit at birth. Both parents must have it. You and I can have it. So they are human beings like you and I. So the education program at a mass level is needed to ensure that all Malawians understand that we are dealing with human beings. But also the prosecution is important. The interventions to enable livelihoods to go is also very important. It has to be a complete package of responses.
DeProse, I want you to stay with me here, and if you have anything to add to the conversation now, please feel free to join in. We're going to go to Tanzania now. Now, last year, the Tanzanian government banned witch doctors due to the ritual killings of people living with albinism for their body parts. Since then, 19 people have been sentenced to death after being convicted of killing albinos. It is believed that at least 75 people living with albinism have been killed in Tanzania alone since 2006, while more than 100 have been attacked and mutilated. Now, to give us an update on what is happening in Tanzania via Skype, we are joined by Dr. Ali Posi, who is a lecturer at the Law School of Tanzania. He's also an advocate of the High Court of Tanzania. Dr. Posi, thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning.
I'm here with DePrez Machena from Amnesty International. Just give us a quick overview. What's happening in Tanzania at the moment?
Well, things are relatively quiet. One can say there is an improvement, but on last month, there was a reported case in one of the regions, Kagera, where one person with albinism was, the body parts of the person with albinism was found. And this shows that the situation is not as safe as it seems.
This government ban that we've seen on witch doctors who practice who does this kind of practice, do you think this ban has helped, or has it made it more difficult and forced them underground, as DeProse Machena was pointing out to us a little bit earlier?
Well, we all know this thing is related to myths. So even if you ban it, obviously it's like a drug business. People will go underground. They will find their own ways of doing it. And how do we solve it? I believe the best way really to solve it is very expensive. Apart from the formal education, we should get on board traditional, like village leaders, clan leaders, spiritual leaders, because these things, as I mentioned last time, people who are educated, who are wealthy enough, they are the ones who are buying these body parts.
Yeah.
So they are, in a way, accelerating the business and the belief. So how do we solve it is to inject a way of belief that people with albinism are normal people. They can do anything. They can be managers. They can be business people. They can be family people. So it's a broad way of educating people.
Ali, we've seen vigilante attacks elsewhere or surfacing elsewhere where elderly women who are living alone who are accused of this kind of thing, they've been killed and hacked to death. Is this happening in Tanzania as well?
You mean like grandmothers, elderly women without albinism?
Yes.
It happens. Actually, it was very rampant in like 8 to 10 years ago. It's an African thing, and I believe African cultures don't differ much. As we have just had the story in Malawi, it's like a copy and paste of Tanzania. So it's an African thing. Whatever you hear in Nigeria, Central Africa, with regards to disability or traditional beliefs, it's an African thing. So it happens, and it's the same in Tanzania.
I've been speaking to DeProse from Amnesty International. He's still with me in the studio. He pointed out to me that in Malawi, for instance, it's difficult to even get the police to maybe do 100% effort in the kind of investigations. Do you have a similar scenario in Tanzania where the police are maybe reluctant to help your community out?
Very much similar, and I see it in two different ways. One, you will find a police maybe, which could be in rare cases, that the police is also part of the community. He's also in that kind of belief that he doesn't believe. He believes that people with albinism will make them rich. So any other belief that a person with albinism in the village will bring unlucky events within the village. You will only find that if that particular police is stationed and grew in that particular village. That's one point. The second point is people within the community, rural areas in village, are reluctant. I think that's the biggest challenge even in Tanzania. Because these villages are of small people, small population. So they are of the same belief, the same culture. They are reluctant to give evidence because the first thing they believe, the people with albinism bring cars to their village. They are the cause of hunger or of lack of extensive farming during a particular season. So they will be reluctant. Actually, they will be happy a person with albinism we get rid of. That's difficult in giving evidence. And the third point is corruption. These people are buying body parts. Mind you, some are politicians, some are businessmen. These police officers are paid small wages. So if you corrupt them, they will not investigate the case properly. And another point is lack of technical ability of investigation. You will find, because when you go to court, it's a matter of law. So if you miss the point of law, your case will be dismissed unless you really have a magistrate or a judge who is progressive in law and the like.
Dr. Posse, thank you very much for joining us and sharing with us what is happening in Tanzania right now. That is Dr. Ali Posse coming to us live via Skype from Tanzania. Of course, he's a lecturer at the Law School of Tanzania. He's also an advocate at the High Court there. And it's a problem, he says, that's an African problem. But I want to wrap up with you, DeProse. I want to wrap up with you with the one thing that he pointed out that kind of stands out for me. It's collusion, corruption, and the people that buy body parts are the rich. The rich people are buying the body parts. And it's in many ways, we led to believe that it's rural, poor people who are involved in this kind of trade. And that's not the case. It might be a scenario where we have to relook our strategy and take it into the urban areas where these body parts are being bought.
The attacks, the abductions, and the intimidation and discrimination is taking place everywhere, urban and rural areas. So it's very important that it's a national strategy that needs to be put in place. Amnesty International's evidence in Malawi was that all kinds of people are being arrested, found with body parts, or abducting or intimidating rich, young, poor, women, men. And I think the strategy really is taking a comprehensive approach. We didn't find evidence of police collusion. We found evidence of police incapacity to deal with this. We also found evidence of criminal justice system that is weak, that is not strong enough. We found evidence of belief system that is deep-seated, and that needs to be tackled. We also found evidence of abuses of human beings who can no longer access socio-economic rights that you and I access.
Yeah.
And we think that the conversation from Tanzania demonstrates that this is a regional problem.
Yeah.
So the next recommendation we've made to the government is to take a regional approach, work with Tanzania, work with Mozambique, work at the SADC level, so that we really create a rights-respecting region across Southern Africa.
Well, you have all the support, I would say, of all right-thinking people, not just in SADC, but all around the world, because it's a problem it's a problem that we should all hang our heads in shame a little bit if it's continuing in this day and age. I thank you, Deprose Muchena from Amnesty International, joining us today in studio. We talked about a very weighty issue. Yes, there must always be a place for traditional practices in our society for time immemorial. But like modern practices, if traditional practices take life, harm and hurt others, there should be no place for those in society. Let's take a look now at what is happening on social media at this very hour. Now, of course, fees must fall are very much back in the news. That's a hashtag for you to look out for. This following a statement by the Department of Higher Education late yesterday that the estimated costs of damage to property at universities around the country had increased by more than 100 million South African rands, as our finance minister would say, bringing the cost of damage since October of last year to 459 million rands. That's rands that me and you are paying into the fiscus. Let's take a look at some of the tweets there. You see it. Avela says they should brace themselves for more fees must fall marches. Haven't seen much differences yet in higher education fees. Yes, we're using the money to pay for the burning of buildings that have been burnt down. Itumeleng Tsapi says, I know costs of fees not falling, and that is a country perishing because the majority of people being excluded from education. That is not 100% true. This man is very much in the news right now. The hashtag is Eldrick Woods, Tiger for you and me. Hashtag Tiger Woods. Now, the former world number one and the greatest of the modern era says that he will not be fit enough to play in the US Open next week. And here's that tweet from Tiger himself. He says, continuing to make solid progress, but I'm not ready to play in the US Open and the Quicken Loans tournament straight after that. Those of you will remember he nearly won that one last year. But he will be hosting the Tiger Woods Foundation tournament shortly thereafter. Next hashtag that's in the news, there we go. It's called hashtag Kuberg. Eskom is currently launching the 2016 nuclear operator pipeline project in the area right now. There you see the South African government tweet that they sent out. Very much, if you have inquiries, numbers on the screen. Now, the Bavenda King has welcomed the SABC's decision to relocate Phala Phala FM to the Limpopo town of Thohoyandou. The decision by the SABC not to broadcast visuals of the destruction of public property has also received the thumbs up from the King. Now, SABC COO Mr. Claudi Mutsuneng and his team paid the King a courtesy visit recently.
The relocation of Phala Phala FM is part of a long-standing agreement between the SABC and the Bavenda traditional leaders. The 52-year-old radio station will now be based in the community it serves. The station is to undergo a revamp. In just over 90 days, the radio station will broadcast some of its programs from Thohoyandou.
Phala Phala FM will broadcast from Thohoyandou. Here in Venda, here in Thohoyandou, what we need to do, because we have buildings there, we need to build studios so that when production house come and you produce content, you don't go to Auckland Park. You are able to shoot here in Thohoyandou.
The popular soapy Mubango, currently produced in Auckland Park, will also relocate to the new premises. The Bavenda King has welcomed the initiative. The King has also supported the SABC stance on not broadcasting footage of protesters destroying public property.
this station belongs to us. The management is doing this for us for the benefit of our own children. I'm saying we should look after this property. You know, there is a very bad habit that is happening in F1. We are saying to the people, we don't want the new building to be vandalized. We should take it as our own assets.
Let's now take a quick look at the headlines from around the African continent today. We'll start in our neighboring country, Namibia. The Namibian reports that violence has affected Namibia's economy by 47 billion Namibian dollars over the last year. This is according to statistics released by the Global Peace Index yesterday. Very interesting. Then, in Swaziland, the Observer says, whilst the nation awaits the much anticipated outcome of the Zavali inquest headed by coroner Nondomiso Similani, and what will become of the investigations of the Royal Swaziland Police Services into the Ayanda Magabela case. Last Friday, another local was reportedly assaulted and left to die on the road by the police. Finally, we are in Zimbabwe. The Herald reports that government is working on a raft of measures, including withdrawal limits and increased use of plastic to address the cash crisis in that country. Those are the headlines from around the African continent right now. Of course, we endeavour to connect you with the continent right here on this very show every day. Time for us to take a short break. Newsroom will be back with sport after a short break.
The set is a film about an Indian man who falls in love with a white girl during apartheid and the struggles that they face in order to be together. The movie set in the 1970s when interracial relationships were illegal.
You are the most beautiful woman I've ever seen in real life.
Take a journey of love with Mo and Pindi.
Take your life and put it in somebody's hands. And it's not a cowardly act to do.
We kind of knew that it is taking a risk having a relationship with anyone.
Fashion is a reflection of beauty in clothes.
What motivates me to be a designer is because I like fashion a lot.
Join your host Rufulo Mula for that 1 hour weekly dose of arts and entertainment news.
Good morning, welcome back. I'm Kendall Makhamat and I've got your sports on Newsroom. Our top story is about swimming, where with just under 60 days to go to the Rio Olympic Games, South Africa's swimmers flexed their muscle at the Mare Nostrum Series meet in France. There was a mixed bag of results for our Olympic hopefuls, but most importantly, it was a chance for our team to gauge their form of their opponents ahead of the Rio 2016 Games.
Douglas Erasmus began South Africa's charge at the Mare Nostrum Series as it moved to Cannes in France. Swimming in the 50-meter freestyle, an event which was widely dominated by his countryman Roland Schoeman in recent years, the 26-year-old, who has already qualified for the Rio Olympics, splashed his way to a fourth-place finish in a rather slow time of 22.56 seconds in his opening race. His time, though, shows his consistent form, following times of 22.26 and 22.55 he swam at the SA Nationals a couple of months ago. There's still work to be done, though, to break the sub-22 second mark to become a serious contender for a medal at the Olympic Games. There was better news for Miles Brown in the 400 meters freestyle. Brown came into the final having qualified fastest in the heats. At 200 meters, though, it was all about Britain's James Guy, who was on world record pace, having opened a gap of more than 2 body lengths to the rest of the field. But that was until the last 150 meters, when he ran out of steam. Russia's Alexander Krashnik pipped him to the gold in a time of 3 minutes 46.96. Guy coming home in 3.47.01, getting the first medal for Team South Africa, his bronze in a time of 3 minutes 48.82 seconds. Tatiana Schoenmaker was far off the mark in her swim in the ladies' 100-meter breaststroke. She came home more than 2 seconds behind eventual winner Rika Muller-Pedersen, who won in a time of 1 minute 07.23 seconds. Schoenmaker touching the wall in 5th place. With 27 individual medals to his name, South Africa's Cameron van der Berg was the man to beat in the men's 100-meter breaststroke final. At the turn, the South African Olympic champion looked set to add yet another gold medal to his name. But it wasn't to be, as he had to settle for 2nd place.
3 and 4, Van der Berg, and here comes Ross Murdoch right back on him. Zanko of Russia, look at him come back into the field as well. Ross Murdoch trying to go for the wall. Murdoch might just get this, and it's 7. It's Francis Silva out of nowhere.
The 100-meter butterfly saw Chad Leclerc get his first dip in the pool at Carnet. Gold at the Monaco leg of the Mare Nostrum last month. This race was a mere procession for the record holder of the series.
Leclerc, but Leclerc's going to get to the wall first. He does in 51.56 for Chad Leclerc. That is a new Mare Nostrum record for Chad. Here is the world champion from both Barcelona and Kazan. Second equal of the Olympics by Michael Phelps in 2012. Chad Leclerc, new record for the Mare Nostrum of 51.56 today.
Miles Brown was back in the pool for the men's 200-meter freestyle. The South African, who finished 2nd behind Yannick Angel of France, touching the wall by less than 0.04 of a second behind the winner for a silver medal finish. Rounded off a good day in the pool for Team South Africa, who finished with 4 medals in the 7 races they were involved in. Tabiso Sitole, SABC News.
Now going to the other story that's also making headlines across the world. 2-time Euro defending champions Spain have arrived in France as they look to win an unprecedented 3rd successive European Championship crown. Meanwhile, with just 1 day before the tournament opens, France has tightened security in and around stadiums. But the Euro 2016 organisers say the tournament is not subject to any specific terror threat.
Fan zones in host cities where thousands of spectators are expected to gather to watch matches on giant screens have been subject to safety concerns, but they are set to go ahead, notwithstanding 2 layers of security screenings. Unrest of the pitch is threatening to spoil the party as France prepares for the Euro 2016 tournament. Rail workers say they will be protesting against government-proposed labour reforms throughout the tournament, making life difficult for the millions of visitors who are expected. Organisers of the tournament are concerned with the ongoing industrial actions across France, especially in the transport sector.
I like soccer, but unfortunately the government insists on regressing living conditions. This is about working conditions, but it is also about living and family conditions.
Meanwhile, defending champions Spain have touched down in France looking for a record hat-trick of European Championship crowns. Spain are among the favourites to win the Euro 2016, but the team's 1-0 home defeat by Georgia on Tuesday has set alarm bells ringing. The Spaniards are in Group D and will begin their title defence against the Czech Republic on Monday before facing Turkey and Croatia. With teams arriving in large numbers, it's not long now before the highly anticipated kick-off on Friday evening. 60-year-old band UEFA president Michel Platini will be allowed to attend matches at the European Soccer Championship, providing he does not do it in any official role. Nduduzi Ndlovu, SABC News.
Other news that are hitting headlines today. Russian former world number 1 Maria Sharapova was handed a 2-year ban by the International Tennis Federation. This following her positive result for a banned drug, meldonium, at this year's Australian Open. ITF said the 29-year-old 5 times Grand Slam champion's ban would be backdated to the 26th of January this year, meaning her results from the Australian Open, where she reached the quarterfinals, would be scrapped.
I did fail the test, and I take full responsibility for it.
She said she'd been taking the drug for a decade to treat diabetes and low magnesium. After warning athletes in October last year that it intended putting meldonium on its prohibited substance list, WADA eventually did it in January. This after evidence that it boosted blood flow and enhanced athletic performance. After her admission, Swiss watchmaker Tag Heuer cut its ties with Sharapova, while other brands such as Nike and Porsche initially distanced themselves from her. Nike has since rekindled its relationship with her, continuing its sponsorship deal despite the negative publicity. The ban means she'll miss this year's Wimbledon Championships, the title she won as a teenager in 2004, and the Rio Olympics. Sharapova has 35 WTA singles titles and has won all 4 of the sport's Grand Slam titles. Her career earnings amount to $36 million, while her off-court earnings, according to Forbes, are around $200 million. Now, you remember that when this broke, Maria Sharapova made it, she was the victim in all of this. She was sorry, and she really had no idea that she was breaking the law and it wasn't her fault. Seems to have worked, because here's a statement that says the ITF tribunal has found that Maria did not intentionally break its rules. Maria has always made her position clear, has apologized for her mistake, and is now appealing the length of the ban. Based on the decision of the ITF and their factual findings, we hope to see Maria back on court and will continue to partner with her. Darren Rovell repeating what Nike has said, and breaking news, Nike has just lifted its suspension of Maria Sharapova's endorsement deal. Claire McCracken says Sharapova gets a 2-year ban, and Nike announced they continue to partner with her. Not entirely sure that sends out the right message. Claire, you know what? They did exactly the same thing with Justin Gatlin, 2-time doper. They're still backing the guy. Adrian Wilson, I support Nike in standing by Sharapova. Anti-doping board is on persecution as focuses on performance enhancement, not athlete welfare. You know what? If we cared about athlete welfare, we try and make sure they do not dope and destroy their bodies, bringing their sport into disrepute. And Mary Sesha, dear Nike, does your continued support for Sharapova mean that you're ambivalent about illegal drug use in sport? Just wondering, just asking. Are you, Nike? Rakesh Savji Pamar, so Sharapova fails a drug test, but Nike remains sponsors. Ridiculous. Had it been footballer, you would ditch. Embarrassing. I'll leave that with you just to settle in for a while. And very interesting how Nike has responded to the latest from WADA and Maria Sharapova. Now, before I go anywhere else, I know that Eben and Tsieti have got a very interesting topic for you. So stay close.
Yeah, today we're talking, thank you, Kendall, by the way. Hello, if you've just joined us. Today, everybody knows I like to rag our meteorologist, weather presenters. It's kind of my favorite thing on broadcast news. Weather presenters, though, they play a most important role in educating the public about the science and the risk posed by climate change, and we know how important that is today. They're often natural communicators and can simplify complicated scientific concepts, to explain the weather, especially extreme events that people experience through today's climate change. It is for this reason that our very own Paul Tsietse Monare joins a group of international weather presenters stroke meteorologists on an annual basis to find ways of communicating climate change a little bit easier. Now, he's here in studio to tell us a little bit more about the latest forum that took place in Paris. Very good morning to you, Tsietse. Always nice to have you with us.
Thank you so much.
You know I'm always on your case. But tell me, was this a free trip?
No. There's no such thing as a free trip. Somebody had to pay.
But it wasn't you.
No, it wasn't me.
No, but tell us about the serious note. This is serious business. I think that, climate change should become a separate news line item in the news. Do Do you share that view, and is that something that you guys are talking about?
Yeah, I certainly do, and I always encourage almost all of our weather presenters to always, add a little bit of information about climate change and just green living, sustainable living that we should all be doing here in South Africa and all over the world. And yes, this conference, although it was a little bit more expensive and it was quite far away, but it's very, very important because you get to meet all these other brilliant minds out there, and they all have a common goal, and that goal is to reduce our emissions and to make sure we limit the warming of the environment to just only 2 degrees, because as business as usual, if this continues, it will go between 4 degrees and maybe even 7 degrees, and that's going to be quite disastrous for us.
That means Table Mountain will become an island.
Table Mountain will most certainly become an island if it does not drown, because sea level will rise drastically, and our coastal areas are very beautiful. Cape Town, also other places such as small islands, the Bora Boras and so forth. I don't want to mention what would happen in places such as Tokyo. So yeah.
But we live in a very interesting, it's almost an ironic sort of period. Everything in mainstream media tells us to consume more, to bling more, to show off more. And we know all of that is at the expense of the environment.
Yeah, exactly.
We have to learn to live with less. How do we change this narrative in popular culture that you must consume more to living with less?
Yeah, well, you're very right. Everything we do is all about super consumption. If you can microwave it, consume, eat, delete, ruin, that's basically what's happening. But we need to get this message across. And if we can start all levels, from children in primary, in early high schooling, as well as university, and for people in business as well, we need to start showing people we can produce energy, we can produce everything that we need in a more sustainable way. We can go back to more renewable ways of doing things, like recycling as well, like producing energy from wind power and solar power, because solar power is not going anywhere. The sun's still got a couple more million years to go. It's not going anywhere.
It's a simple process, really. What you take out of the environment, whether it is this expensive suit that we're wearing, or
your expensive suit,
you have to put it back in. Let's not go there. Let's stick to business here. COP22 in Morocco. What is your expectation of COP22? We've come a long way with the COP. So are we in a happy place?
The thing about the COP is such a difficult situation, because the negotiations really, for those guys to agree on one sentence can take a whole day, because no country wants to compromise their development and their economic resources just for the environment. And what they forget is that we live in this environment. Without this environment, then there can't be a president, and there can't be anything to consume. But the agreements that came in from Paris is really, really good. I've read the agreement. You should too. Maybe we should do it sometime next week. The agreement is so good, and if everybody just implements it, everybody has agreed that they will disclose. They will say how much they are producing in terms of carbon dioxide and so on. But if they keep on to limiting them, if everybody sticks to limiting, because although it's law-abiding, some people can still bypass it in some ways.
It's the powerful that always seem to have the whip hand in that case. But we've run out of time today. I'd really like us to discuss that next week. Tete Monare always comes in. He's always fighting for the planet. He's always fighting for green issues. We always have to stand together and fight for our environment. It's the only one we have. Unless, of course, we have already got the capability to travel to other planets. I don't know about that. We'll take a short break. When we come back, Renee will give us an update of our top stories.
Health Talk looks into incorrect lifestyles that lead to chronic diseases. It is extremely important to take care of our bodies to a long, healthy life.
Incorrect eating and being inactive then leads to the person becoming overweight and obese.
The kidney is one of the essential organs of our bodies. It keeps us healthy and extracts toxins from our blood.
The kidney controls the blood pressure.
Right.
And if the blood pressure is not normal, then your heart is affected, all the blood vessels in your body is affected.
Dialysis is the only solution to kidney failure. The support of the family is crucial.
What made it
possible for me is to accept that I've got kidney failure.
Join your host, Dr. Sidla Mutawung, every Saturday from 9 to 10 a.m.
Is over here. I'm Eben Janssen, and Kendall Makamaite is actually on the sports desk, busy updating stuff as we count down at 11 o'clock here, shortly after 11 actually. Remember, if you forgot, we asked the question a little bit earlier around the Dagga debate here in South Africa. For those of you watching in other countries, it's around marijuana. We've asked the question, should all marijuana use be decriminalized here in South Africa? This after the Central Drug Authority came up with a policy shift, really. It just sort of changes the game. All they've asked for it to be decriminalized. What do you say? Well, we've had lots of traction around it, lots of views around it. People continue to talk about this. Lollipop says here,
decriminalization is bad in law. If the law is wrong, we will always fix it. Ignoring a law is not good.
Jurisprudence, that's a very highbrow there, Lollipop. Unati talks about Newsroom. I'm afraid this will lead to people faking marijuana plants that will cause health problems to smokers. Maybe we should legalize it then totally and have it regulated, Unati, and taxed.
This one coming in from Rebel Rider says, that's the reason it's more sensible to completely legalize marijuana so that people can grow their own. It's safer.
Yeah, very sobering thought there. Rantu says, Newsroom, let's fight drugs problem by legalizing Dagga to free our people from discrimination. Decriminalize marijuana, why illegal? Says Rantu.
And this one
we've had this one. We've had a Lollipop. This is a jurisprudence one. Bad in law, he says. Well, keep it coming. We love your interactions. We love to hear your views at SABC Newsroom. It's time for us now to get a news update. Rene will do that for us.
President Jacob Zuma meets the security cluster to discuss terror alerts issued by foreign embassies. Former President Mandela's grandson Ndaba delivers a touching speech on the legacy of his late grandfather at the UN General Assembly. And 2 Palestinians are accused of killing 4 in a suspected terror attack. Well, let's see what's happening in the sports front with Kendall.
Good morning. Thank you very much. I've just managed to put in some new information that we definitely want to be bringing to our viewers later on. Good morning to you at home. This is what we've got for you in the sports today. Less than 2 months away from the Olympic Games, and Chad Le Clos in red-hot form, taking gold at the Mare Nostrum in Cannes, France.
That is a new Mare Nostrum record for Chad.
I had failed a drug test at the Australian Open.
And disgraced tennis superstar Maria Sharapova gets her official sanction for failing a drugs test, and it's a 2-year ban. South African Rugby and the ANC Youth League have confirmed that plans to disrupt Springbok test matches will no longer be put into action. All this and more we've got for you in the sports at about 11:40 or so. Be sure to stick around for it. But for now, it's back to Renee Vest with the news.
Thank you very much, Kendall. President Jacob Zuma has met the security cluster in Pretoria to discuss the terror alert issued by the US government last week. Britain and Australia then issued similar alerts. The US Embassy says the status of the alert, which warns of possible Islamic State-inspired attacks in South Africa over Ramadan, remains unchanged. Yesterday's meeting followed a protest by government to the American, British and Australian embassies, accusing them of acting on dubious and sketchy information. The presidency says South Africa will cooperate with Washington on all security issues and that relations between the two countries remain sound. It's the dry winter fire season and emergency personnel are on high alert, from devastating veld fires to infernos in informal settlements. Both claim scores of animal and human lives every year.
Harmony Gumede is still watchful of flames. In 2012, the 11-year-old and his younger brother were trapped in their shack. While they were asleep, a candle tipped over.
She couldn't see me. She thought of going out. Then she thought, oh, there's still the big brother. And then she went in. Then she found me.
His brother escaped unharmed, but Harmony's life has been altered.
I just got burnt. I didn't die. Just burns make you change a bit.
It happens in places like Slovo, just another informal settlement where you don't want to spend bitterly cold winter nights. Shack fires, the norm here. The main culprits, unattended candles, paraffin stoves and exposed wiring.
Illegal connections are, some of the, causes of these fire incidents.
In densely populated informal areas like this, fires are common during winter. They spread rapidly due to the close proximity of shacks. Other common causes are alcohol abuse and partner conflict, and the victims are often children. With no hydrants, fires here are difficult to contain. Communal taps are on the periphery. Emergency workers have difficulty moving through the maze of shacks. With winter's bite setting in, again some safety tips.
Take an old peanut butter, a mayonnaise bottle, you clean it up, you fill it 3/4 of it with sand, you cut your candle into half and then you stick it into the candle jar. And then as it burns, it actually extinguishes itself.
Harmony's message to parents: don't leave your children and candles unattended. He's learnt the hard way. Chilean Pillay, SABC News, Johannesburg.
President of the Association of Mine Workers and Construction Union, AMCU, Joseph Matunjwa, has condemned the killing of mine workers across all mining operations in the country. Matunjwa was addressing Impala mine workers on the upcoming wage negotiations in the mining sector at Rustenburg in the northwest. The condemnation comes only days after the killing of 2 mine workers at Zondereinde Platinum Mine near Northam in Limpopo. He also expressed AMC's concerns about the safety of mine workers in the country's mines. Muitsi Masibi reports.
Addressing the AMCU members at Impala's number 8 shaft, Matunjwa lamented the living conditions of the mine workers. He also called for compensation for the deceased mine workers' families. While AMCU is demanding better wages for its members, it is now more concerned about the safety of the mine workers.
The mining sector can do more in terms of safety of the mine workers. From January to date, we are about 35 mine workers that has been killed in these mines. So we are very worried. And again, we tried to apply for a marsh at Nedlek under Section 77, and we've been denied. So it shows clearly that profit is put before the workers.
Matunjwa appealed to mine workers to stop killing one another.
We condemn such activities of killing one another at the workplace. The employer mustn't sow the seed of division amongst the workers.
AMCU has now vowed not to rest until their concerns have been met, and also challenged the mining companies to prioritize the interests of its employees. Muitsi Masibi, SABC News, Rustenburg.
The UN General Assembly has adopted a political declaration that will accelerate action on fighting HIV and AIDS as the push begins to scale up financing to the tune of $26 billion annually by the year 2020. Diplomats, scientists and civil society are currently engaged in a high-level meeting in New York as work is intensified to eradicate transmission of the HIV virus by the Sustainable Development Goals deadline of 2030. Sharon Bryce Pease sat down with UN AIDS Executive Director Michelle Sidibé in a wide-ranging interview that tackled the trajectory of the virus, South Africa's response and some personal reflections.
Michelle Sidibe, the UN AIDS Executive Director, good to see you again and thank you for talking with us.
Thank you very much for receiving me.
This high-level meeting has at its core the idea, the notion perhaps, that the world can end the AIDS epidemic by 2030. What exactly does that involve?
You know, let me just start by saying that it's very important to not forget from where we came from. You know, a few years back, I was in United Nations in 2001 when people were saying that we could not give a treatment to poor people. That is too expensive. They will not be able to follow protocols. And we have been able, through global solidarity, through social movement, which has been generated over the years, to break the conspiracy of silence first. And then we change completely the pattern of treatment, the paradigm, by reducing the price of medicine from $10,000 per person per year to less than $100 per person per year. We have been bringing activism in science. People are forgetting that. We used to give 18 pills to people per day. Today is 1 pill, and soon it will be maybe 1 injection every 2 months. So we change the paradigm. And we have to say thanks to global solidarity. It would have never happened without the global solidarity. Today we have 17 million people on treatment. No one could have believed that could be happening. We manage also to demonstrate that we can end the transmission from mother to child. New generation are being born without HIV. Cuba has been able to demonstrate. Today we will celebrate Thailand, Belarus, Armenia, so Moldova, many countries will follow. South Africa changed completely the way they were addressing this epidemic. A few years back, it was the denial. Today, we are talking about the biggest programs of treatment in the world. 3.3 million people on treatment in a few years' time, and reducing almost by 86% the transmission from mother to child. That is the success story part, and that is important.
And yet you could then become a victim of your own success. Is that not the concern?
Exactly.
Now?
I am scared about that. We are in inflection point today. Or we go like that, or we will be controlling this epidemic. And the next 5 years will be critical for us. I just said that is a window of opportunity. If we miss this window, we can risk to have a rebound in this epidemic. That's why we need to fast track. We need to quicken the pace. We need to be able to reach this 90-90-90, making sure that people will be able to know their status and put them early on treatment and suppress the viral load, so activity of the virus in the blood. So we will not transmit the disease, and we can be able to reduce the reservoir of a transmission. And that is important.
So when you talk about this fast-track approach, essentially you're talking about something like $26 billion annually by 2020. 2014 you had about 19. How do you fill that $7 billion gap?
I think the world needs to understand, if we don't pay now, we'll pay forever. I think that is the key. And the return on investment is so high. You know, we already averted 8.8 million deaths. That is huge. But if we manage to quicken the pace, we will have a reduction in the cost for dealing with this epidemic. It will not be 26 billion, it will be less than 22 billion, and it will go down. And that is very important to share with the world.
This South African HIV and AIDS story, its devastation, the response of the Mbeki government, the subsequent response that we are seeing today. What's your assessment of the entire story that South Africa represents when it comes to HIV
and
AIDS?
It is a success story of a people. We have to understand that. It is a success story of civil society movement. It is a success story of partnership with the government. They have been able, because they were facing a major challenge. 1,000 deaths every day, 1,500 new infections every day. they just realized that it was a matter of urgency. They had to really address these issues. And I think we have a combination of different factors. Civil society, of course, also government, a good minister of health, president who understood quickly that it could be part of his legacy, and good policies have been put in place. They change completely the pattern of the response in South Africa. South Africa is a model today in shared responsibility. They are paying almost $2 billion from their own budget to support their response. And I think they averted more than 3 million deaths. It's just a success story.
And yet, Mr. Sidibe, in the age group 15 to 24, we are seeing about 5,000 new infections per week across 14 countries in East and South.
Unfortunately, we have to cut out of that interview. Apologize for that, but we will replay it in the show a little bit later or even tomorrow if you can't finish that. Very interesting one, the moves afoot around that. But Cabinet is holding its media briefing, and a lot of recent events are likely to top the agenda. Let's go there straight away. The Minister Jeff Radebe is busy briefing us. Let's go there.
Rail Agency, South Africa's new extra police mega commuter trains. These new state-of-the-art trains, scheduled for operation in October of this year, have automatic doors, open passageways throughout the train, air conditioning and closed-circuit television, and enhanced commuter safety. This train connects South Africans and will play a key role in supporting public transport and igniting growth. In better enabling small businesses, National Treasury and Black Business Council establish a working center which will assist small businesses with registration on the Central Supplier Database, attend e-tender queries, and other client services of National Treasury. This will go a long way in reducing red tape and making it easier for businesses, especially small businesses, to take advantage of economic opportunities and contribute to the development of our economy and country. We encourage prospective and current service providers to register on this working center, which is the source of all supplier information for all spheres of government. The purpose of centralizing government supplier database is to reduce duplication of effort and cost for both supplier and government while enabling electronic procurement processes. A further contribution to the creation of decent employment through inclusive economic growth was the recently held National Jobs Fair under the theme Jobs Summit and Jobs Fair, My Job, My Future, which will empower the unemployed with soft skills, information and face-to-face search for placement opportunities, especially around further learning, self-employment, cooperatives and community works programs. Parliament's passing of the expropriation bill provides a legal certainty to the state to continue with implementation of our country's program of radical socio-economic transformation to resolve the land question firmly at the center of its agenda. It defines the administratively just process that any expropriating authority must follow. This expropriation bill and Envisage Act provide for procedural efficiency, certainty, and more quicker expropriations in the public interest, including land restitution. A person or community dispossessed of property over centuries are entitled to the extent provided by this bill to restitution of that property or to equitable redress. It also sets out the rules by which government can lay claim to land in the public interest and for public purposes. The bill follows the Bill of Rights and the property clause in our Constitution criteria to be considered in the case of compensation for expropriation. It will also allow for property owners to be fairly and equitably compensated. And once signed into law, this bill will repeal the Expropriation Act of 1975. Inclusive growth is the focus of the Presidential Broad-Based Black Economic Empowerment Advisory Council, which met recently. This BEE Advisory Council will be working closely with the Presidential Professional Working Group that has been established by President Zuma to ensure that issues affecting especially black professionals are attended to. The meeting is also another demonstration of the spirit of unity and partnership to reignite inclusive economic growth, bearing in mind the goal of BEE so that we can move forward in transforming and de-racializing the South African economy. South Africa participated for the first time in a two-day 8th International Information Technology IT Forum in Kati-Masinsk in Russia, which is being represented by Minister Mutambi. The forum is taking place from yesterday until today and will leverage science and technology to solve some of the biggest challenges in education and health systems. Delegates at this forum include representatives of business, professional associations, research, educational and IT experts, especially from the BRICS countries. The 5th Annual Waste Management Coro, led by the Minister of Environmental Affairs, under the theme Promoting Innovation and Upscaling Enterprise Development, is aimed at improving service delivery, ensuring the fast turnaround of waste management programs to promote the recycling economy while bringing more of our communities into the mainstream economy by accelerating jobs, access to job opportunities in the waste sector. The release of the local government audit outcomes by the Auditor General for 2014-15 shows an improvement in the audit results by municipalities from 2010-11 to 2014-15 financial years. The number of municipalities that received financially unqualified audit opinions with no findings has increased from 13 to 54. Furthermore, 18 additional municipal entities also have achieved a clean audit status, taking the total number of clean audits to 72 in the current period. There was also a significant reduction in adverse and disclaimed opinions, which decreased from over 30% in 2010-2011 to about 11% of municipalities in the current period. These improvements of these audit outcomes have been the result of the Back to Basics program, Operation Clean Audit, decisive leadership, improved financial and performance management, and record keeping. Cabinet noted the judgment by the Supreme Court of Appeal declaring the digital broadcasting migration policy unlawful, invalid, and being set aside. A team from the following departments: the Presidency, Departments of Communications, Telecommunications and Postal Services, Justice, Constitutional Development, and Trade and Industry, will advise government on the full implications of this judgment. With local government elections scheduled to be held on the 3rd of August, all political parties have to abide by the Electoral Code of Conduct, which all parties have signed. This binds all parties contesting in the elections to play their part in securing a free and fair election. Political parties and supporters must abide by the Constitution, and those guilty of criminal activity must face the full might of the law. In light of the recent political intolerance, the Minister of Police has established a multidisciplinary task team that comprises South African Police Service subs, crime intelligence, detective services, Directorate of Priority Crime Investigation, the Hawks, and forensics to underpin the vision of the medium-term strategic framework outcome 3 that states all people in South Africa are and feel free. On the matter of the terror alert issued by the United States Embassy in Pretoria, Cabinet reiterates the statement that was issued by the Presidency yesterday that the security cluster met to discuss the matter further with a view to ensuring the continued safety of all people in our country. In addition, our government will continue to discuss the matter with the U.S. government as part of ongoing cooperation on security matters between the two countries. Our country, South Africa, and the U.S. continue to enjoy strong and cordial relations in various areas of cooperation in political, economic, social, and security matters. This year marks the commemoration of the 40th anniversary of the 16th June 1976 students' uprisings, which profoundly changed the socio-political landscape in South Africa. President Zuma will officiate at the National Youth Day proceedings at Orlando Stadium in Soweto on the 16th of June 2016 under the theme, Youth Taking South Africa Forward. Highlights will include a keynote address by the President as well as the wreath-laying ceremony at the Hector Peterson Memorial. A special media briefing will be held on Tuesday, the 14th June, to provide further details on the program of the day. Currently, ministers and deputy ministers have been engaging with our people, especially the youth, through this Youth Month to encourage them to take up opportunities across various sectors so as to better their lives and enable them to effectively contribute to the development of our country and our economy. These programs of ministers involved in the Youth Month program will be published on the government website and social media platforms. With the onset of the initiation period, many young males are preparing to enter the rite of passage to adulthood. Our government, led by the Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, is working with the institutions of traditional leadership and all stakeholders to ensure that the 2016 initiation season pursues zero deaths, which is driven through a theme, we love our tradition, we value life of our youth. Families, parents, and legal guardians must ensure that young men only choose legally operating initiation schools where pre-screening is done and surgeons are well trained and well known to parents. Communities are requested to report any illegal activities on 0800 111 166 or hashtag zero tolerance on initiation deaths. Some key cabinet decisions. The President of the Republic, President Zuma, was selected to the Heads of State High-Level Panel on Water, and the Director General of the Department of Water and Sanitation was appointed as a Sherpa to the President as well as a panel member of this high-level panel on water. The United Nations Secretary General's Advisory Board on Water and Sanitation recommended the establishment of the select heads of state high-level panel on water to lead the advocacy initiative on water and adaptation following the adoption of the 2030 Development Agenda by the United Nations Secretary General in September 2015. The panel will accelerate the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goal 6, which is on clean water and sanitation, which has a renewed focus on the profound impact of climate change on the water cycle. It is on this light and given the persistent drought that is experienced across the country that Team South Africa is encouraged to participate in the cleaning up of our rivers, streams and wetlands on the 18th of July as part of South Africa's annual Mandela Day activities. The communication strategy on the National Development Plan Vision 2030, which will highlight the implementation of the NDP, will communicate the impact on NDP on South Africa. That was adopted. A special media briefing will be held to unpack that communication strategy, the usage of the logo, the branding guidelines and applications to ensure a uniformed communication approach across all government and other implementing agencies. There was a report on the extent of desertification in South Africa and its impact on the rural economy and related strategies being implemented to address these challenges. The effects of this desertification, it's about the desert, land degradation and drought impede efforts aimed at poverty eradication, safeguarding food security, enhancing water quality and quantity, resilience and adaptation to climate change, as well as achieving sustainable development. In this regard, South Africa has introduced a number of legislative tools, policies, strategies, and practical programs aimed at addressing desertification and land degradation at all levels. These interventions will contribute to conservation and socio-economic upliftment while creating job opportunities, skills development, and enhancing livelihoods. The release of this report will also contribute to recognition of June 17 as the World Day to Combat Desertification and Drought, which was proclaimed by the United Nations General Assembly. The response report to issues received from the United Nations Committee on the Rights of the Child was approved. This relates to the second report on the implementation of the Convention on the Rights of the Child and the optional protocol on the sale of children, child prostitution, and child pornography. These will be considered at the 73rd session that is going to be held in Geneva from the 13th to the 30th of September this year. Cabinet also noted the commencement of the data collection process for the next treaty periodic reports on the African Charter on the Rights and the Welfare of the Child and the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child to be submitted by the 7th of January 2017 and 15 July 2017 respectively. The recommendations and proposals from the comprehensive report on the review of the implementation of the White Paper for Social Welfare of 1997 was approved. This will fast-track the revised White Paper on Social Welfare, which will be aligned to the government's priority of building cohesive, caring, sustainable, and safety communities. The recommendations focus on priorities of the NDP, which identify social protection and developmental social welfare as pathways to progressively achieve social development. Implementation of these will have a positive impact on the lives of our people who are at risk, who are vulnerable, and living in extreme poverty, particularly women and children and people with disabilities. This will also ensure that such groups have access to specified core basket of social development services required to improve their standard of living and enhance their social welfare. Cabinet approved to present to Parliament the amended treaty on extradition with the Republic of Botswana in terms of Article 231(1) of our Constitution. The aim of this treaty is for more effective cooperation between South Africa and Botswana so as to facilitate the extradition request received from Botswana and South Africa where death penalty is a possible sentence. This underscores that South Africa will not be a safe haven for criminals by providing for this extradition of fugitives and to facilitate the effectiveness of law enforcement authorities in the prevention, investigation, and prosecution of crime. The South African Police Service We'll henceforth be publishing one annual comprehensive report on crime statistics and also on a quarterly basis. The annual comprehensive report will accommodate the changes in crime statistics that may result from the quality assurance and changes related to the status of the cases that may take place during the year under consideration. The need for frequent statistics will better enable government decision-making process to address issues from crime trends. This will also contribute to the NDP pillar, which states that people of South Africa need to contribute to safer communities. Bills. The Copyright Amendment Bill and the Performance Protection Bill will be introduced to Parliament. This will cater to ensure that the outdated bill is removed and that new issues such as digital issues are taken into consideration. And this is aligned to the NDP's objective of promoting innovation, improved productivity, more intensive pursuit of a knowledge economy, and better exploitation of comparative and competitive advantage of South Africa. The current policy revision is based on the need to align the intellectual property legislation with the digital era and the developments at a multilateral level. This also will ensure a one policy approach at national and international levels from government. The revision also includes the incorporation of key flexibilities in the area of copyright and performance protection. Upcoming events. Preparations are advanced for South Africa to host the 21st International AIDS Conference, which will be held at the Nkosi Albert Luthuli International Convention Center in Durban from the 18th to the 22nd of July this year, co-hosted by government and the International AIDS Society. South Africa is ready to host this conference, which will also boost tourism industry, small, medium, and micro enterprises, and the informal trading sector. The conference will provide also a momentous opportunity for South Africa to showcase its massive successes in addressing HIV and AIDS issues. It has global significance as it will attract between 18 and 20,000 participants from 180 countries. Global leaders from government, polka leaders, captains of industry, civil society, development partners, and academic institutions will be in attendance. The next IMC of this preparatory conference will be held in Durban, which will include an inspection in loco of the facilities, wherein a media conference will be held as well. President Zuma will undertake a presidential Siyahlola monitoring visit to Kwaggafontein in Mpumalanga tomorrow, Friday the 10th of June. This visit follows the President's interaction with South Africans in February 2016 in Marabastad in Pretoria, where commuters raised issues around service delivery challenges in Kwaggafontein. This program will allow the President and the government to see firsthand the successes as well as the challenges being faced in that area. The President will also use the visit to further respond to the challenges faced by the residents of Tembisile-Hani local municipality. Well wishes and congratulations to the following: David Khatebe and Shane Bosman for winning the men and women categories of the 2016 Comrades Marathon. David Khatebe also set a new men's down run record of 5 hours 18 minutes. The announcement by Volkswagen Group South Africa plant in Uitenhage has been recognized as the top manufacturing plant in the global VW production network for 2015. It has achieved the highest index score of 113.2% amongst 13 plants around the globe. The 301 South African firefighters from the Department of Environmental Affairs working on fire program who are in Canada assisting in fighting wildfire. Cabinet wishes them well and a safe return home. The awarding of the Order of Merit to Minister Derek Hanekom with the highest tribute by Germany for an individual for their political, economic, social and intellectual achievements. He has been awarded in recognition of Hanekom's contribution to cooperation between Germany and South Africa during his tenure as the Minister of Science and Technology. Cabinet also wishes all Muslims a blessed Ramadan. The following condolences were noted: to the Sahrawi people on the passing away of President Mohamed Abdelaziz, to the Browdy family on the passing away of Advocate Julius Browdy Senior Counsel, who represented thousands of people who faced eviction from their homes during the Group Areas Act at the height of political repressions, and also represented many icons of our liberation struggle, including Nelson Mandela, Oliver Tambo, and many, many others. He was also a founding member of Lawyers for Human Rights. To the family and religious community on the passing of Reverend Dr. Simon Kubule, a leading religious leader, academic, and a liberation struggle stalwart, who recently had been awarded the Order of Luthuli in silver in April by President Zuma in recognition of his excellent contribution to the liberation struggle in the field of education and religion. To the family and friends of veteran actor and director Nyembezi Kunene, to former Bafana coach Ted Dimitri, who had a stellar career coaching Kaizer Chiefs, Mamelodi Sundowns, Pirates, and also coached Bafana during the 2006 Africa Cup of Nations. To family, friends, and people of Nigeria on the loss of Nigerian soccer legend Stephen Keshi, who had won Africa Cup of Nations both as a player and also as a coach, and contributed to soccer in Africa and the world. And also joining the global community in paying tribute to the former heavyweight boxing champion and international sports icon Muhammad Ali, who was an inspiration to many people around the world and used his position to champion the fight for civil rights, justice, and equality. Appointments. All appointments are subject to the verification of qualification and relevant clearance. National Empowerment Fund, the reappointment of Ms. Pelisiwe Mthethwa as the Chief Executive Officer of the NEF, the appointment of Ms. Nondomiso Mandisa Chikwatamba as the Chief Executive Officer of the Small Enterprise Development Agency, of the appointment of Mr. Thokozani William Magwaza as the Chief Executive Officer of the South African Social Security Agency, and of Mr. Michael Mlengana as the Director General of the Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. We will take questions. I want to propose that we start with Cape Town Lizel. We just the usual, introduce yourself and the media house you are representing. Lizel.
First hand, Paul.
Good morning, Minister. Paul Vecchiotto from Bloomberg. What was Cabinet briefed on the GDP numbers yesterday? And was it feeling Cabinet surprise, shock, or indifference over those numbers? That thing. Secondly, we've had a couple of ministers say on that they'd reported Cabinet on the issue of the Gupta's bank accounts being closed. Has that happened yet? Will the reports or anything, can you give us some idea of the progress of that? Thank you.
Andisiwe.
Good morning, Minister. This is Andisiwe from City Press. Minister, we note that Cabinet reiterates the President's statement on the terror alerts, but there was another statement issued yesterday by DECO on the same issue, which was not the same as the president's statement, which spoke about the Americans basing their alert on sketchy details and questioning the whole manner in which the whole issue was handled. Did the cabinet talk about that, and what are your views? Are you not? Are you supporting that statement from DECO that also came out yesterday afternoon? I just need clarity, Minister, on the crime stats. Are they going to be published 4 times a year from now onwards, and when is this starting, if it is indeed the case? And lastly, you say there is a team that has been established or will be established to unpack the full implications of the Supreme Court of Appeal judgment on digital migration. What does that mean? What does advise government on the full implications? And who will be part of that team? Is it ministers or is it teachers? Thanks.
Okay, number 3, just introduce yourself, use the mic. Thanks.
Good morning, Minister. I'm the Warren Prince of Network 24. Just to add on to what Andisiwe asked with regard to the terror alerts, we know that the President states that the Minister in the security clusters met last night. Are there any update on what was decided at that meeting? Thank you.
No more questions from Cape Town. Over to you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Minister.
Yeah, on a question from Bloomberg. As you know, the release of stats and the GDP numbers are done by the Statistician General, and he did that while we were meeting at Cabinet, so we did not have a briefing of the full statement and the report on the GDP numbers, but we did get a report on the broad number of minus 1.2% and so on. So it is now that we are going to be having the full implications of the GDP numbers. But as the statement indicated, we were already addressing some of those sectors that have driven our GDP downwards, especially on the issue of mining. I've indicated that there is Operation Pakisa, that we're now at the stage of unveiling the Operation Pakisa decisions and what measures will be taken by government, business, labor, and all stakeholders in reigniting the mining sector in our country. On the issue of the banks, there was no report that was presented. We're still awaiting the team that was appointed by Cabinet. On the issue of the terror alert, the statement by the presidency yesterday and the statement that we are making today, that's the official position of the South African government. I did not see myself that statement by DIRCO. On the issue of crime statistics, the decision is that the SABC will be releasing crime stats on a quarterly basis and also one annually to be in line with the reporting system of government as a whole. When does that happen? It was taken yesterday. That means with the expectation that it will be done on a quarterly basis, I've said. Maybe back to the issue of terror alert. The ministers of security met yesterday. I do not have the report of what transpired there, but I'm sure they're going to be communicating what they met about. On the issue of digital migration, a team has been set up of ministers in the presidency, communications, telecommunications and postal services, justice and constitutional development, and trade and industry.
Thank you very much, Minister. We'll take questions from Pretoria, if there are any. Oh, there are. Okay. One.
Good morning, Minister. Barry Bateman, Eyewitness News. It relates to this terror alert yesterday, and I appreciate that you say you haven't read the DIRCO statement, but what it does say in the statement is that it essentially accuses the U.S. Embassy of attempting to influence and manipulate and control South Africa's anti-terror work. And it also accuses them of trying to create the perception of an inept government, and that government isn't capable of protecting South Africans. Is this a sentiment or a feeling that government cabinet feels that the Americans, by issuing this terror alert, are attempting to undermine our work? I mean, it's a very serious statement to be made. And certainly, was that raised at the cabinet briefing? I'd like to have your thoughts on that as well, please.
Number 2.
Bonge Wakomalo from ENCA. My question is coming at the back of Barry's question and also Andisiwa's question. When it comes to this particular statement, Minister, from Durko yesterday, I know that government is saying that they continue to maintain cordial relations with the U.S., but did it have any implication at all, or did you experience any sort of strain from the side of the U.S. Embassy based on this very statement? Thank you.
Good afternoon, Aldrin St-Pierre from SABC TV News. Minister, I understand that you say that government's position now is on the statement issued by the presidency. However, though, yesterday when we spoke to the DIRCO spokesperson, Clayson Munyela, he indicated that this statement that has been issued and approved at the highest level, which would indicate that it's probably the minister, because he didn't want to say whether it is indeed the minister or whether it was the president that has signed off or approved that statement, because then it seems to be on a difference. You have this one statement from DIRCO, which seems to be really harsh on the U.S. government as well as the Australian governments and the United Kingdom as well. And just a question on clarity, the amended treaty on extradition with the Republic of Botswana, what is it exactly that government wants amended there?
Okay.
Good morning, Anton Meyer from Pretoria FM. Minister, the Operation Pakisa in the mining sector has been announced, I think it was last year, and it said they will start their work in August 2015. Shouldn't this be a priority for government to start with the Operation Pakisa in the mining sector as soon as possible, given the fact that we've seen an 18.1% drop in GDP in that sector? By the time we start with this thing, we will see the results of the second quarter. And maybe by then it's too little too late. We need to start with Operation Pakisa. I don't know. What's your thought about that? Another thing, there were reports of a draft bill that was put on the table at a cabinet meeting about South Africa's withdrawal from the International Criminal Court. Did Cabinet discuss the withdrawal from the International Criminal Court? And is there such a draft bill on the table as the report states? Thank you.
Okay. Minister, that's fine. I think we'll take this. Yeah, we'll come to the next round. Minister?
I would like to reiterate what I've said now, reiterating the statement that was issued by the presidency yesterday, and this cabinet statement from the post-cabinet briefing that reflect the government position on this matter. I also like to refer you to the statement that was issued by the United States Embassy yesterday, also reflecting the same sentiment that the relations between the United States and South Africa are cordial in all spheres, including on security matters. So that is the official government position. So our sentiment is that of that statement issued by the presidency and the statement that is reiterating it arising from the post-cabinet briefing. On the issue of Botswana, the importance of this treaty between South Africa and Botswana, as you will know, that Botswana also has on their statute book capital punishment. And in South Africa, there is a constitutional court ruling, both firstly in the Mankwanyana case in the late 90s, declaring capital punishment to be unconstitutional. And recently, about 3-4 years ago, there was a Botswana national who was facing capital punishment in Botswana, who fled to South Africa. So he went to court saying that he should not be extradited back to Botswana because he faces execution. So the Constitutional Court ruled that the South African government cannot extradite people to countries where a capital punishment can be executed unless there's an assurance from that requesting state that even if capital punishment is the sentence, but it will not be carried out. So this treaty between South Africa and Botswana is trying to resolve that issue, where if there's a person who's facing capital punishment in Botswana, in terms of this treaty, that person will not be executed. The issue of the International Criminal Court is being dealt with by the Department of Justice. It has not yet been resolved by government. So I think the statement that Minister of Justice issued last week is still an operating position of government.
Okay. The mining Pakistan. The mining Pakistan.
Oh, sorry. On mining Pakistan, the Operation Pakistan mining took place last year, and then this year we've been having meetings with affected stakeholders, how best to implement all the recommendations of Operation Pakistan. As of yesterday, I've met some of the labor leaders led by the president of NUM, President Matosa. Our understanding is that in a very short while, the Operation Pakistan of mining will be unveiled so that the country will see what areas will be implemented in order to reignite the mining sector. I can assure you that there is a great deal of consensus on the program of action in the mining sector.
Thank you. There were some hands. Okay. Cape Town?
Yes, we'll take 2 hands. Andisiwe, we'll start with you.
Andisiwe from City Press again. Minister, I feel like you perhaps did not answer my question in the sense that you do say that you don't know or you didn't read the other statement, which is fine. But we're saying the other statement said all these things about how this issue was handled. Did you discuss that as the cabinet, how the matter of terror alerts was handled by the U.S.? And what is your position on that issue? Now you know what the statement said, but can you comment on how they handled that matter, and do you agree with what was in that statement?
Paul?
Yeah, Minister, just to come through on this as well, is Cabinet distancing itself from the Durko statement? And that's, can you just clarify that for us, please? Thank you.
That's it from Cape Town, Chair.
And that's the last round, Lizzle. Any questions from Pretoria? And this is also the last round. Okay, there's none. Oh, yes, sir?
I just wanted to, with regards to those questions, sorry, Peter from Jacaranda FM, the miscommunication I think that we are concerned about is that we're not getting the same message from government. So I think the actual question that I just want clarity on is, although perhaps, Minister, you haven't read the statement by Durko, is there a certain message that's being sent from a different department as compared to presidency? It seems that the U.S. Embassy and the presidency are speaking the same language, but Durko obviously is not agreeing with what is being said and done.
Okay, that will be all the questions, Minister. Thank you, Minister.
Well, there's nothing more I can add to what I've said. The official government position was reiterated in a statement by the presidency yesterday and reaffirmed by cabinet today as I'm releasing a post-cabinet statement. So that's where the matter rests. I want to emphasize again the United States Embassy issued a statement, which I'm sure you have seen it, that reiterates the same sentiment about the cordial relations between the U.S. and the South African government, and we are continuing on those matters in economic, political, social, as well as on security matters. And lastly, the security cluster of ministers, I'm sure from time to time, will be appraising the South African public on the state of our readiness for any matters that relates to the safety of South Africans or anybody who resides within the borders of the Republic of South Africa.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Minister. Thanks, Lizzle. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. This brings us to the end of this briefing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Briefing in Pretoria, where Minister in the Presidency, Jeff Radebe, has just finished briefing the media on their cabinet briefing that they had yesterday. So Radebe says really that the decisions by the ratings agencies not to downgrade South Africa has affirmed government's work to reignite the economy. He also spoke about government that is implementing key interventions to address the negative GDP growth, especially in key industries. So he was specifically speaking about the economy. He also addressed issues of land restoration and the environment. He also spoke more on a commemorative note, speaking about this year's 40th anniversary of the June 16th uprising. He says that the President will lead a ceremony at the FNB Stadium. When it came to the terror alert, which is what we thought that briefing would really focus on, he just said that our country is enjoying good relations with the United Kingdom and with the United States, and that they are working together on those terror threats. But we will have an update for you on more that came out of that briefing. We'll take a short break. I'll have your headlines for you just after this.
One other person has been shot dead and